Chapter 1568. Minyu heard from the film crew that she had been practicing her dance diligently. Apparently, she spent most of her time in the practice room. So busy. He sighed in his heart. Then he sneered and felt a chill in his heart. In a fit of pique, he told himself that he had to give this ignorant woman the cold shoulder. He wanted her to have a taste of what it felt like to be ignored. The parent-teacher conference was originally scheduled for 2 in the afternoon. Muyaja calculated the time and decided to deal with everything in the morning. If he could, he would move the meeting forward. If he couldn't, he would postpone it to the next day. He took Yu's words to heart. Hence, he called Minyu and asked him to find a low-profile car. Minyu frowned. "Boss, I don't understand what you mean. What are you planning to do?" Muyaja coldly glanced at him. "I'm asking you to find me a car that's more low-key." "Low-profile? For example, a Volkswagen Phaeton." "A Volkswagen Phaeton, so low-profile?" Minyu asked. "Boss, why do you want to change your car?" Muyaja replied. "I want to keep a low profile." Minyu's mouth opened in surprise. However, he did not say anything and went to find a car for him. After the meeting in the morning, he returned to his office and found that he had 2 missed calls on his phone. He tapped on them and saw that they were from the same unknown number. Muyaja sat down at his desk and dialed the number. When the call was picked up, a woman's gentle and polite voice came through. "Excuse me, are you Yu's father?" Muyaja was stunned for a moment and asked, "You are?" The teacher smiled and said politely, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Sorry to disturb you. I'm the Dean of Education at Yu's school. My surname is Yuan. Is it convenient for you to come to the school now?" Muyaja frowned and raised his wrist to look at the time. It was only 10 in the morning. He could not help but feel suspicious. Isn't the parent-teacher conference at 2 in the afternoon? No, it has nothing to do with the parent-teacher conference. Is it convenient for you to come over now? Yu is in a bit of a situation and needs you to come over and take care of it. The teacher's voice was extremely polite. Through the phone, she could feel Muyaja's imposing aura. Due to his imposing manner, she didn't dare to say it out loud for fear of angering him. Muyaja looked at the time again. Since the teacher called to say that there was an urgent matter for him to deal with, he naturally couldn't ignore it. Even though there was still a video conference coming up, it had to be put aside. Muyaja said, "Good. I'll be right there." "Good. I'll wait for you at the Academic Affairs office." Muyaja hung up the phone and got up. He picked up his coat from the hanger and put it on. Just as he opened the door, he bumped into Minyu. He was holding a few proposals and documents from the conference. He had already organized them and was about to go to the conference. However, when he looked up, he saw Muyaja ready to go. He was a little surprised. "Boss, aren't you hot wearing so much? The heater is on in the conference room." Muyaja said decisively, "I'm going out. Postpone the conference until I come back." Chapter 1569. Minyu anxiously said, "If there's an emergency, leave it to me." Muyaja gave him a side glance. "Are you going to attend my son's parents' meeting?" Minyu. "I dare not." Muyaja snorted. "Then hurry up and postpone the meeting." Minyu rushed over at once. F***ck. So it's the little master's parents' meeting? He mistakenly thought that Xiao Yichen had caused trouble in school again. In fact, Muyaja usually did not attend any parent-teacher conferences or parent-teacher conferences that Little Yichen's school had invited. Muyaja had always been absent from Xiao Yichen's parent-teacher meetings. Hence, in a sense, Yu's parent-teacher meetings were Muyaja's first parent-teacher meetings in his life. When Muyaja arrived at the school, the main gate was closed. It was the 4th period of the morning. He parked his car in the parking lot and entered the school. When he reached the administrative office, he could hear the commotion coming from inside, even from outside the door. Among the noisy crowd, only a middle-aged woman's voice was particularly sharp and piercing. "Where are Yin Tianyo's parents? Haven't they arrived yet? Didn't they say that they'll be here soon? If I have to say, this child's parents have no sense of responsibility at all. Their child bullied a classmate in school and caused trouble. Yet as his parents, they're still not here to settle the matter. How infuriating." A gentle voice hurriedly consoled her. Madam Lin, please calm down. Director Wu, you're still telling me to calm down? How can I calm down? How can I be calm? If your child is beaten up like this, can you still be so calm? Look at my son's forehead. It's bleeding profusely. I wonder if it'll leave a scar in the future. This is too much. A 7-year-old child is bullying in school at such a young age? If he's like this now, what will happen when he grows up? Yin Tianyu looked refined and polite on the surface, but who would have thought that he would do such a thing? In my opinion, when he grows up, he will definitely be the scum of society. The teacher's voice was slightly dignified. Mama Lin, your words are too much. They couldn't just rely on Lin Feng's words to determine the situation. Yu hasn't explained what exactly happened. Let's wait for his parents to come and hear his explanation. However, the woman didn't listen to what the teacher said at all. She said unreasonably, "What's there to explain? It was wrong to hit someone. The child is still young and doesn't know any better. I won't argue with a child. But when his parents came, they had to give me an explanation. Otherwise, there's no way this matter will end just like that." At the same time, there was the sound of someone slamming the table in the office. The person was obviously furious. "Mrs. Lin, please be quiet. The other teachers are in class. Don't disturb the children in the other classes. We will definitely handle this matter fairly for you." It's good that you know. The school was a place to teach and educate people. Don't let some black sheep cause such a foul atmosphere. My child came to school to study, not to be bullied for no reason. Mu Yaja stood outside the door and listened for a while to sort out the logic. Chapter 1570. Based on what the woman had said, he had probably gotten into a fight with another child in school. Hence, the teacher had called him to come to the school to settle the matter. Why would Yu get into trouble for no reason? He was introverted and did not like to get into fights with others. Why would he hurt another child for no reason? At this thought, Mu Yaja knocked on the door. "Please come in." Mu Yaja pushed the door open and walked in. He saw that the large office was filled with people. Among the unfamiliar crowd, a middle-aged woman was holding a child with bandages on his forehead. The child's eyes were red and swollen, as if he had been crying. He was nestled in the woman's arms and looked aggrieved. Yu, on the other hand, was sitting next to a teacher in a white shirt with a badge on her chest. Compared to the teacher, who was in a terrible fix, Yu was calm and unperturbed. From the beginning to the end, he acted as if nothing had happened and remained silent. In this farce, he did not open his mouth or say a single word. Even though this middle-aged woman was cursing and scolding in front of all the teachers in the academic affairs office, he acted as if it had nothing to do with him, and did not say a single word. Or perhaps, he thought that it was pointless to talk to such an uncultured person like Mrs. Lin. If he were to speak, this woman would probably explode in anger. He sat there leisurely, but he looked a little disheveled. There were a few black shoe prints on his well-ironed school uniform, as if he had been in a fight. The moment Mu Yaja stepped through the door, everyone's curious gazes landed on him. He walked in and stood at the entrance. His imposing height of 1.88 meters made the large academic affairs office seem incomparably small. His extraordinary aura spread to every corner of the office. Even the middle-aged woman could not help but be stunned when she saw him. Before Mu Yaja entered the office, Lin Feng's mother had a lot of imaginations about Yu's guardian. However, she had not expected this man to be so young and shockingly handsome. Too young. Too handsome. If it were not for the man's facial features resembling Yu's, she would not believe that this man, who looked to be in his 20s, was Yu's father. "Are you Yin Tianyou's father?" Lin Feng's mother glanced at him and asked casually. However, Mu Yaja did not seem to hear what she said. He did not even look at her as he walked over to Yu. He bent down slightly in front of him so that they were at eye level. Yu raised her eyes to look at him. Her originally indifferent expression finally changed. She revealed a helpless and ashamed expression. "Daddy, you're here?" Mu Yaja nodded and looked him up and down. He asked gently, "Are you hurt?" His low, magnetic and mellow voice was like an aged red wine, making people who heard it unable to help but be intoxicated. Yu shook her head and smiled. "I'm not hurt." He's not hurt. It's our son who's hurt." Lin Feng's mother, who was standing behind them, slyly interjected. Mu Yaja ignored her. He carried Yu Yu in his arms and sat down on the chair beside the teacher. The moment he sat down, Yu Yu's discipline master stood up, feeling at a loss as to what to do. Chapter 1571. This man's aura was too intimidating. She was even more nervous than when the provincial education department came to inspect the school. He was clearly so young, but the aura on his body was like he was looking down on all living things. His entire body was exuding the aura of a superior. Even Lin Feng's mother, who had been arrogant from the moment she entered the room, could not help but restrain her attitude and twitch the corner of her lips. In the crowd, the man's presence was too eye-catching. Everyone was intimidated. If he did not speak, no one dared to speak. Mu Yaja first carried Yu Yu in his arms and carefully examined him. There were no injuries on his face. However, when he lifted his collar, he saw a slight bruise on his collarbone. It was not serious, but it was not light either. It looked like he had been hit by something. Of course, it could not have been a fist. It was a little hard, as if he had been hit by something hard. This kind of injury would only be slightly red in the beginning. It would not show. After a while, it would turn into a bruise and appear on the skin. Other than that, there were no obvious injuries. Compared to Yu Yu, the other child's injury was obviously more serious. When he was carried in his arms, he looked at Yu Yu with eyes full of grievance and hatred. It was obvious that these two children had been through an unfriendly war. However, in this war, Yu Yu was obviously the one who had the upper hand. In the past, he had a weak body and would have been at a disadvantage if he fought with other children. However, during this period of time, he had learned some defensive skills from Xiaoyichen. To Xiaoyichen, what he had taught him was just the basics. However, for a child of his age, this kind of skill was incomparably terrifying. Yu Yu was in a daze as he allowed Mu Yaja to examine him carefully. A strange warmth arose from the bottom of his heart. He had not expected this man to suddenly appear in the school. After this incident, the Dean of Academic Affairs had asked him for his parents' number to contact the parents to come to the school. The first thing he had done was give him Li Hanlin's number. However, Li Hanlin had been exposed when he called him. The dean was furious and asked for his number again. Yu Yu thought about it, but did not give Yin Shishir any information. Mommy is on set now. She must be very busy. Moreover, she was a public figure now. She could not appear in such an occasion. Where's Daddy? He must be very busy, right? Would he come? Knowing that he was in trouble, would he rush over to help him deal with it? In fact, such a matter could have been handled by Li Hanlin, but for some reason, he handed over Mu Yaja's number. Unexpectedly, he arrived in less than half an hour. He must have rushed to the school as soon as he received the call. Yu Yu's heart warmed and she couldn't help but snuggle into his embrace. For the first time in his life, he felt that he had someone to rely on. He thought to himself, it feels good to have a backer. It was a good feeling to be surprised. After Mu Yaja finished checking, he felt relieved. Yu Yu was not injured, which was the best result. As for what exactly had happened, he was not too concerned. He only knew that he should trust his son. He understood Yu Yu's character. He would not have any conflict with a child of his age. Chapter 1572. In Yu Yu's heart, these children were innocent and immature, so he always gave in to them. However, this did not mean that he would not ask about it. Mu Yaja asked, Yu Yu, what's the matter? Explain it to me. Without waiting for Yu Yu to speak, the woman at the side nagged. What else can it be? You're Yin Tianyo's father, right? Your son injured my son. Let's see how you're going to explain this to my family. Give me an explanation. Mu Yaja raised a brow in displeasure and raised his head. His eyes, however, instantly turned cold and frosty. It's not polite to interrupt, is it? The woman said unhappily. Didn't you want to ask what's going on? Let me tell you then. I'm asking my son, not you. Mu Yaja looked at her expressionlessly. His cold and sharp eyes were as sharp as ice blades. So don't interrupt. You. The woman widened her eyes in anger and looked at him in disbelief. She then said to the discipline master, Teacher, look at him. This person. He's so rude. The discipline master, however, was secretly criticizing her. Who's the rude one here? Yu Yu's father had always been calm. From the moment he entered the room, he gave off an elegant demeanor. Lin Feng's mother, on the other hand, gave off a rude vibe. However, in front of so many people, he could only keep his words to himself. The discipline master could only swallow his anger and say, Lin Feng's mother, please calm down. Yu Yu hasn't said a word since the beginning. Why don't you let him tell us what happened? Everyone is here. You should at least respect the child. Yu Yu has the right to speak too. The woman's red lips curled in disdain as she muttered under her breath. He did something wrong. What respect is there for him? Her voice was soft, but Muyaja still heard it. He looked at her abruptly. His eyes were as piercing as icicles. The woman felt as if she was being pricked by needles, and her hair stood on end. She glanced at Muyaja, only to see his frighteningly cold face. She shuddered in fear, and did not dare to act rashly for a moment. The discipline master patiently asked, Yu Yu, tell us what happened. Nothing. I fought with him, but he's stupid and couldn't win. It's impossible for our Lin Feng to hit others. She pointed at him and said ferociously, Teacher Yuan, Lin Feng has always been a good boy. He gets along well with all the other children in the class. He loves each other. He loves each other. Look at him, at such a young age, at such a young age. As soon as she finished speaking, Lin Feng, who was in her arms, burst into tears again. He was really good at acting. Yu Yu raised a brow but did not explain further. Instead, his lips curled into a sinister smile. The unruly curve of his lips was very similar to his father's. You didn't hit me? He paused and muttered to himself for a moment before saying viciously, Oh, you didn't hit me. Then I was bitten by a dog. You, the discipline master immediately stopped him. Yu Yu, don't talk nonsense. Oh. Yu Yu shrugged and obediently stopped talking. He did not want to lower himself to the same level as a childish guy. Anyway, he admitted that he had hit him. Chapter 1573. His mother had taught him from a young age that he could not lie. At the same time, as a man, he had to bear the consequences of his actions. He had to be responsible and responsible. He had always kept that in mind. He had never forgotten it. Muyaja asked again, Who started it? Him. Yu Yu pursed her lips. He started it. Yes. Then you fought back? Yu Yu said truthfully, Yes, he started it. He hit me with a pencil case. I was in pain, so I fought back. So you injured him? Muyaja's gaze was deep. Yu Yu stuck her tongue out and nodded. She did not forget to explain seriously, Daddy, it was legitimate self-defense. The man immediately raised his head and saw Mrs. Lin flatly deny. Our Feng Feng didn't start it. It's clearly your son who started it. He doesn't admit it and even hit back. He's slandering us. After saying that, she rubbed the child's cheeks with heartache. Even though the child's forehead was bandaged, blood was still seeping out. It was a tragic scene. Sigh, my baby Feng Feng has never been wronged like this since he was young. I don't know if this injury will heal or not. Will it leave a scar? It's on his face. Teacher Yuan said, Mrs. Lin, the injury on Lin Feng's forehead is not serious. Maybe it will heal in a few days. It probably won't leave a scar. The wound is quite shallow. Let's not make it so embarrassing. Harmony is the most important thing, right? Harmony is the most important thing. Mrs. Lin frowned. Teacher Yuan, it's easy for you to say that. Harmony is the most important thing. You say that the wound is shallow? Oh, it's not serious. It's not serious because it's not serious? So we're just going to let it go. Fine. If you're going to let it go, call his son over and beat him up for our Feng Feng. Let's just let it go. When Teacher Yuan heard that, her expression froze. This Mrs. Lin was too much. How could she say that? It was just a child. How could she make things difficult for a child? Hit my son? When Muyaja heard this, he laughed coldly. I'd like to see who dares to touch a single strand of my son's hair. His words were not harsh, and his voice was not loud. He had a smile on his face, but he was imposing without being angry. When these words came out, everyone who heard them felt their scalps go numb. Their children don't know their manners, but their parents don't know either? Yu Yu said, Daddy, don't lower yourself to their level. You. There are so many pairs of eyes in the class who made the first move. What's there to quibble about? Lin Feng attacked first. I let him have his way at first, but he became more and more aggressive, so I had to fight back. In the end he made the first move, but in the end he still couldn't beat me. How promising. Frightened by his words, the teacher hurriedly stopped him. You don't talk so much. She had always known that Yin Tianyu was a mature child who surpassed his peers. He was responsible and humorous. Although he was not the oldest in the class in terms of age, the other children treated him as a big brother. Therefore, she had a good impression of him from the bottom of her heart. Alas, Lin Feng's mother was not easy to get along with. She knew Mrs. Lin better. She was extreme mean, and had an unforgiving tongue. Her words were especially tricky. Chapter 1574. It was said that he was a judge in the city's supervision department, and had a lot of power. Therefore, Teacher Yuan didn't want Yu to offend such a powerful family. She had a good impression of Yu. Yu didn't buy it. Teacher Yuan, didn't you say that you would handle this fairly? I was just telling the truth. Teacher, do you believe me? Of course she believed him. Teacher Yuan had a complicated expression. She looked at Mrs. Lin, and then at Yu. After weighing the pros and cons, she sighed. Yu, I believe you. Yu smiled in satisfaction. This Teacher Yuan was quite upright. He liked it. Lin Feng's mother didn't know what to say. Teacher Yuan said that she believed this bastard. What did that make her? So after half a day, she had become a clown? Lin Feng's mother gritted her teeth and threatened. Teacher Yuan, you have to be responsible for what you say. You don't have any evidence. How can you make such assertions based on the words of a few children? What you hear may be false, but seeing is believing. Did you see it? Yu asked. Interesting. You didn't see it either. What makes you say that? But you can't beat Feng up like that. Mrs. Lin shouted hysterically. Her voice was so loud that it shook the office. Teacher Yuan was embarrassed. On the one hand, Yu's words were obviously more tenable. Logically speaking, this matter was very simple to resolve. Both sides just needed to communicate and apologize to each other. After all, the conflict between children was just a matter of the past. Maybe tomorrow it would be over with a smile. However, Lin Feng's mother wasn't easy to talk to. She was even more serious than the children, and kept asking for an explanation. What explanation could she ask from a child? Therefore she said, Mrs. Lin, it's normal for children to fight. It's not a big deal. Lin Feng is injured and so is Yu. I've understood the situation before. Indeed, as Yu said, everyone saw that Lin Feng was the one who started the fight. Still, the boy was in the wrong in this matter. He should not have been so heavy-handed. Lin Feng is also in the wrong. He shouldn't have hit him first. Therefore, both sides should apologize to each other. Let's end the matter here. Impossible. Mrs. Lin reprimanded. It's not over. Teacher Yuan, you're obviously biased toward Yin Tianyu. I don't care. Anyway, you must get Yu's father to give you an explanation for today's matter. Otherwise, when my husband comes to school later, don't blame the scene for being too ugly. These words were clearly a threat. He was clearly threatening Teacher Yuan. Mrs. Lin actually didn't care who was right or wrong. Her child had been injured and wronged, and that was something the heavens couldn't tolerate. Furthermore, she had previously caused such a ruckus in the teaching office. Under so many pairs of eyes, how could she admit defeat? There was no way out of this matter. It was impossible for her to apologize. Hence she said those harsh words. Teacher Yuan helplessly glanced at another teacher. That teacher understood tacitly and immediately stood up. He took Lin Feng's mother and the other family members to another office and comforted them. After the door was closed, only a few teachers were left in the spacious office. Chapter 1575. Yu sat calmly in Muyaja's arms. Muyaja, on the other hand, was expressionless as he watched the drama unfold. Teacher Yuan sat beside Muyaja and poured him a cup of tea. Then she started to prepare him mentally. Yu's father, is this your first time coming to school? Why didn't I see you when school started? I didn't see Yu's mother either. We were busy and neglected you. I'm sorry. Muyaja narrowed his eyes and glossed over it with a few words. Teacher Yuan's heart skipped a beat. This man's voice was so pleasant to the ears. If not for the fact that he was taken, she would have fallen in love with him. Yu looked up and saw a flash of admiration and shyness in Teacher Yuan's eyes. She could not help but twitch her lips. F***ck. What was going on? Yu's father, since you're here, why don't you register your name? Teacher Yuan took out the name list. The school would make a contact book for each child. However, Yu's parents' information was not registered. Hence, the school had been urging the child's parents to come to school. In fact, Li Hanlin had come to school when school started. However, because the information did not match, the name list was cleared. Mu Yaja held a pen and scribbled on the name list. Finally, he signed his name. Teacher Yuan glanced at it and was shocked. Your surname is Mu? Yes. She was a little surprised and said, Oh, so Yu doesn't follow your surname? Mu Yaja looked up disapprovingly and asked, Does it matter whose surname he follows? Teacher Yuan was speechless. She exchanged a few pleasantries and said, Of course it doesn't matter whose surname he follows. His mother is busy. If there's anything in the future, you can contact me directly. Okay. Teacher Yuan paused and then asked tentatively, So Yu's father, how do you intend to deal with this matter? I'll deal with it as I should. Teacher Yuan hesitated and moved closer to him. She lowered her voice and said, Yu's father, there's something I have to tell you. Lin Feng's father and mother are not simple people. I, on the other hand, am very fond of Yu. Everyone is very regretful that this has happened. But since it happened, we should think of a solution. But you should know that there's no such thing as absolute fairness and justice in this world. Actually, Yu should not have offended Lin Feng's mother this time. She's mother is the most troublesome person's mother's father. When it comes to Lin Feng, she's unreasonable. She's from a powerful family. We can't do anything to her. But I have a Lin, Yuo's father. Lin Feng's mother's family is very rich. Her husband's family is also very influential. Her husband is a judge. He's not to be trifled with. Yu is also at fault in this matter. So he should lower his head and admit his mistake. Then he should apologize to Lin Feng and pay for the medical fees. Then this matter will be over. Why wouldn't he do it? We don't want to make a big deal out of this matter for Yu's sake. Sigh. Mu Yaja curled his lips and said coldly, As a teacher, how can you say that in front of a child? Chapter 1576. Mu Yaja said calmly. He paused and raised his head. His voice was cold and soft. Is that what you mean? As soon as he finished speaking, Teacher Yuan's face immediately turned red. It was so red that it looked like blood was dripping from his face. Yu's father, you should know that I don't have any bad intentions. But, isn't this for your own good? If Lin Feng's mother calls Lin Feng's father over, I'm afraid that things will get out of hand. Yu looked at Teacher Yuan expressionlessly. He had thought that this teacher was quite upright. He had misjudged her. He wouldn't apologize. Even if he had to apologize and admit his mistakes, Lin Feng should apologize to him first as he was also in the wrong. That was the basic principle. Mu Yaja didn't think that Teacher Yuan was saying that for Yu's sake. Immoral values. Did she think that by saying that, she would be able to give the child the best education? She had to admit her mistakes when she did something wrong. But that didn't mean that whoever had a stronger family background or a stronger father would have to bow down to the other party. That didn't make sense. Hence, Mu Yaja narrowed his eyes and said coldly, The child is still young. I hope that the education he receives will at least be immoral. Teacher Yuan's words just now are disappointing. Yu's father, please don't misunderstand. I really like Yu. I'm only saying that for your sake. Mu Yaja interrupted her. There's no need for you to think that way. Teacher Yuan's face revealed a dejected expression. Yu said, Teacher Yuan, I didn't do anything wrong. Why should I apologize? Lin Feng was the one who attacked me first. I was just defending myself. The injury on his forehead wasn't caused by me. So why should I apologize? Yu. Teacher Yuan was helpless. Why did Lin Feng hit you for no reason? I heard from my classmates that it was because you said harsh words that provoked him, so he was unable to restrain his anger and hit you. You shouldn't have scolded him and angered him. I didn't scold anyone, Yu said innocently with a kind expression. Lin Feng had been humiliated and infuriated, so he had attacked first. At this point, Muyaja focused on the main point. Why did you have a conflict? Yu suddenly pursed her lips and stopped talking. There can't be a conflict for no reason. Muyaja hugged his son's shoulders and said patiently, Tell Daddy, What is the reason? All right. I'll tell you. Helplessly sucking in a deep breath of cold air, he answered. That's because he insulted me and Mommy. The reason why Yu had insulted him was because Lin Feng had spoken rudely first. Yu and Lin Feng were in the same class when they were in kindergarten. At that time, Lin Feng and Yu didn't like each other. Everyone in the class, regardless of gender, liked to play with Yu. They stuck to him and said, Yu long and Yu short all the time. However, no one was willing to play with him. Lin Feng was used to being spoiled at home. Therefore, he was arrogant and had a strong physique. Many children stayed away from him. Chapter 1577. Yu could not gain any advantage over the tall and burly Lin Feng. At that time, the kindergarten teachers knew very well that they could not afford to offend Lin Feng's parents. In comparison, Yu was much easier to bully. After all, who would look up to a single-parent family? Everyone saw the mother and son pair as small fries. Who would be willing to offend someone whom they could not afford to offend for Yu? The neighbors in the neighborhood mocked and ridiculed Yun Shirshir, not to mention the snobbish teachers in the kindergarten. Because Lin Feng wasn't an ordinary child, the teachers didn't dare neglect him. Regarding this matter, they dealt with it as if it was a small matter, and a small matter was nothing. Yu felt extremely aggrieved, but he could not say anything. After he got injured, he did not dare to say anything to Yun Shirshir. Even when he took a bath and treated his wound, he did it secretly. Firstly, he was worried that his mother would be sad if she saw it. Secondly, he was afraid that his mother would find him in school. Lin Feng's family background was special. At that time, their family background was average and could not be compared to his. It was also from then on that Yu made up his mind to become stronger, and let his mother live a happy life in this world where the strong preyed on the weak. That was what he thought, and he did it. Now, not to mention his father, even with his own strength, he did not need to be wary of Lin Feng's family background. Teacher Yuan, on the other hand, had good intentions. She was afraid that Lin Feng's parents would not let this matter go and continue to pester them. She tried every possible way to turn this matter into a small matter, which would make it easier for her. In the end, it was Muyaja who gave her the cold shoulder. Feeling aggrieved, she pursed her lips with an ugly expression. How did he insult you and Mommy? Muyaja pressed on. Yun Tianyu pondered for a moment before telling her everything. It turned out that Lin Feng's mother had known Yun Shirshir since they were in kindergarten. The two had gotten into an argument during the parent-teacher meeting because in front of Yun Shirshir, Lin Feng had said to Yu, "You're a vile spawn with a mother but no father." For Lin Feng to say such words, it wasn't a bad thing. What could a child understand? Lin Feng had probably been taught to say such things by his parents. Lin Feng's mother knew that Yu grew up in a single-parent family. He only had a mother and no father. Therefore, whenever Lin Feng mentioned Yu, his mother would say, "Don't bother with that bastard who has a mother and no father." Children born from single-parent families have very perverted personalities. When Lin Feng heard that, he remembered Yu. His impression of Yu had been influenced by his mother. She had given birth to Yu without a father. Yu immediately scolded. "Humph. She's better than that old hag of yours." She had said that in front of Lin Feng's mother. She had said it on purpose. When Lin Feng's mother heard that, she slapped Yu on the spot. When Yun Shirshir saw that, how could she bear to see her precious baby being wronged? She immediately slapped Lin Feng's mother in return. The two quarreled in front of so many parents until their faces turned red. This was the first time Yun Shirshir had lost control like this. She was so agitated that her whole body trembled. In the end, the principal rushed over and stopped this farce. However, this feud was formed just like that. Chapter 1578. First, he asked in a strange tone, "Is your mommy coming to the parent-teacher conference today?" Yu did not raise his head and said indifferently, "My mommy isn't coming." Lin Feng was about to sneer at him when Yu said, "My daddy is coming." Lin Feng's eyes widened. "I thought you didn't have a daddy?" His mother had always told him that Yu did not have a father, but he said that his father would come to the parent-teacher conference? Huh? Could it be that he was bragging? Yu did not pay much attention to him. He did not want to talk to him. However, as soon as class ended, the classroom was filled with gossip about him. Lin Feng went around and told the other children that Yu only had a mommy and did not have a daddy. Yu said that his daddy would come to the parent-teacher conference in the afternoon. If he was not bragging, then his mommy must have found a wild man outside. When Yu heard this, he immediately went to Lin Feng to argue. Of course, Lin Feng was not as eloquent as Yu. After a few arguments, he was at a disadvantage. In a moment of anger, he raised his fist and punched him. In the past, Yu would not have been able to win against him. However, after the summer break, he had learned some fighting skills from Xiaoyi Chen. In just a few moves, he had subdued this arrogant and despotic little guy and beaten him black and blue. Even though he was also injured, it wasn't as bad as Lin Feng's. Lin Feng cried and threw a tantrum. The whole family gathered and majestically rushed to the school to demand an explanation. When Mu Yaja heard this, his face darkened. What did he mean by having a mother but not a father? Mu Yaja did not dare to imagine how Yin Shishir and Yu had spent the past 7 years. Could it be that this kind of vile mockery had accompanied Yu throughout his childhood? At the thought of this, Mu Yaja's heart ached. Such unbearable words actually came from the mouth of a 7-year-old child. It was hard to imagine how low this child's upbringing was. Lin Feng's mother had acted so arrogantly, and Teacher Yuan had said that Lin Feng came from a rich and powerful family. How could he raise such a rude child? He was an adult, so naturally he couldn't argue with an ignorant child. For a child to have such a good upbringing, it was all because of the parents' education. Hearing this, Mu Yaja let out a cold snort. His eyes glinted as he said coldly, You didn't do anything wrong." These words were undoubtedly meant for Yuan Laosher to hear. At the same time, it also expressed his stance and attitude. His child did not need to apologize to anyone. The other party had insulted him and attacked him first. Regardless of whether it was due to emotion or reason, his son had merely used a legitimate form of defense. What was wrong with that? When Teacher Yuan heard this, his face turned red. He wanted to say something but stopped himself. He didn't know what to say. Chapter 1579. Pausing for a moment, Teacher Yuan explained sincerely. Everyone says that a school is a place to educate and educate. In the process of education, as a teacher, we do need to take up the responsibility of educating our children. But this responsibility is a responsibility, and as a parent we have to shoulder it. In school, the 4 seasons of the year, 2 semesters, 7 hours a day. The rest of the time, we spend with our parents. In terms of education, parents also have an undeniable responsibility. But as you know, which child these days isn't precious? If the teachers are strict with their education, those parents who dote on their children will trample over the school's threshold. Especially Lin Feng's parents. They are especially tricky and cannot be provoked. I don't know how to educate them. I can only do my part. But in this aspect I especially like Yu. Yu is young, but he is very mature and sensible. In class he is obedient and respectful to his teachers. I especially like him. So, as a teacher, I can only hope that you don't let your child suffer too much in this aspect. More importantly, I don't want you to offend the Lin family. Maybe you will say that I am snobbish, but this is the cruel reality of society. I really have no choice. I am doing this for Yu's sake. This long speech sounded sincere, but Mu Yaja felt that it was too laughable and pompous. This kind of reason was not valid at all. Yu's face was also cold. From the beginning to the end, he remained silent and did not say a word. As he watched Teacher Yuan patiently persuade him, he felt that it was ridiculous. Did you know why he worked so hard? He worked so hard to live a life far away from these idiots. Yu pursed his lips and said unhappily, Teacher Yuan, I don't like what you are saying. What do you mean by can't afford to offend them? Yu, why are you disobedient? Teacher Yuan was so angry that she was about to cry. She helplessly glared at him. She sighed, turned her head and said to Mu Yaja, You and Lin Feng don't see eye to eye. Wait until we resolve this peacefully. I'll see if we can separate you and Lin Feng. Then we'll be in different classes. Anyway, I think that Yu is a very likable child. No matter which class he is in, the children are all willing to play with him. But this Lin Feng is an accident. Class allocation? The corners of Mu Yaja's lips curled up coldly. I don't think there's a need to divide classes. After today's incident, he would transfer Yu to the same school as Xiaoyichen. Yu went to this primary school because of the school district. Because of Yu's household registration, he went to this primary school. He didn't expect that the teachers in this school were so bad. Coincidentally, he was transferred to the same primary school as Xiaoyichen. The two brothers could be companions and take care of each other. Compared to Yu, Xiaoyichen was like the king of the mountain in school. Perhaps it was because he was handsome, so all the girls liked him. Perhaps it was also because he had a strong physique, so all the boys in the school admired him and were willing to be his fans. Xiaoyichen's school was funded by an education corporation that was working with Mu Group. Mu Group had also invested a large sum of money in the education of the teachers. The standards of the education were outstanding. In addition, with Xiaoyichen taking care of him, Yu didn't have to worry about being bullied. Chapter 1580. Teacher Yuan looked surprised. She couldn't hold it in any longer and said bluntly, Yu's father, I'll be honest with you. Previously, there was another child who didn't get along with Lin Feng. The parents of the two children got into a fight because of everyone. In the end, both parents refused to back down. In the end, Lin Feng's father stepped in and used some tricks. In the end, the child had no choice but to transfer to another school. That's why I told you not to go against the Lin family. Mu Yaja closed his eyes impatiently. He couldn't control himself and was about to explode when he heard Teacher Yuan's words. The door was suddenly pushed open. It was the principal of the school. She hadn't expected that the principal would be alarmed by this incident. Teacher Yuan stood up in shock. She said in a trembling voice, Principal Wu, why are you here? This is... Principal Wu glanced at Mu Yaja and asked. This is Yu's father, Mr. Mu. Oh, nice to meet you, Mr. Mu. Principal Wu greeted him indifferently. Then he regained his solemn expression and said, Teacher Yuan, please come to my office for a moment. After saying that, he turned around and left. Teacher Yuan suddenly felt uneasy. She said goodbye to Mu Yaja and left in a hurry. The moment the door closed, Yu suddenly covered the back of Mu Yaja's hand. Daddy, why did you come to school? I remember that you have a meeting in the morning. Why don't you go back to work? I'll take care of things here. It won't be a problem. Yu was considerate of him. He didn't want to delay his trip. Mu Yaja lowered his head and looked at him with his deep eyes. He asked coldly, Has it always been like this? Ha. Everyone says that about you. Yu was stunned. He was probably referring to the fact that for the past few years, people had been saying that he had a mother but no father. He didn't want to talk about it. He only said, They all think that I'm an illegitimate child. Illegitimate child? Mu Yaja suddenly sounded a little angry. Mommy didn't explain? How do you explain that? It's obviously a humiliation. If Mommy tries to explain, wouldn't she be asking for humiliation? Yu sighed. Actually, it's not their fault. Why? That's because even I myself thought that they were right. Yu had always thought that he was an illegitimate child, the kind that could not be exposed to the public. Even so, he didn't blame his mother at all. He was very grateful. If it wasn't for his mommy, he wouldn't have been able to see such a beautiful world. It was his mommy who raised him. No matter how others slandered him or looked at him coldly, he did not care at all. The only one he cared about was his mommy. However, his tone could not hide his disappointment. Mu Yaja's heart was violently shaken. He immediately blurted out, You're not. Mu Yaja gently caressed his little face. You're not an illegitimate child. You've never been one. He was anxious to let this little guy know that he was not an illegitimate child. He was not someone who could not be exposed to the public. Daddy really didn't know about your existence for the past 6 years. When Mu Yaja thought about how Yu had talked about those humiliating things in such a calm tone, he felt as if his heart had been pierced by a sharp sword. Yes, his heart ached. His heart ached for Yin Shirshir. Chapter 1581. The guilt in his heart made him feel a little unbearable. He suddenly felt that he could never make up for the past 7 years of emptiness. Yu was only 7 years old. He should have had a beautiful and carefree childhood, but because of the lack of fatherly love, he had suffered so much. He didn't dare to imagine how painful it must be for a child to face such mockery and ridicule. Muyaja gently caressed Yu's rosy cheeks, his slender fingers brushing against his delicate skin. Then he said in a low voice, "I'm sorry that Daddy has made you suffer for so many years. It's all Daddy's fault." Yu was stunned. He had never thought that Muyaja, who was usually not good with words, would say such warm words to him. In his heart, Muyaja had always been a cold and dignified figure. It seemed that he would never say such touching words. However, Yu was really touched by Muyaja's heartfelt words. He could tell that every word that Muyaja said was from the bottom of his heart. So much so that he forgot to react for a moment. He just stared at him in a daze, as if he couldn't believe it. The pain in Muyaja's eyes couldn't be faked. Yu saw it all. Daddy's heart was aching for him. This kind of feeling was really very warm. The position of the heart suddenly became warm and comfortable. He didn't know whether to be happy or worried. He was happy that Daddy cared for him. This feeling made him feel very warm. Very good. What made him worried was the dejected look on the man's face, which stung him a little. His heart ached. Muyaja didn't know what was going on in his little head. His handsome eyes curved slightly as he gently kissed his forehead. Listen, in the future, with Daddy around, no one can bully you. Yu, on the other hand, smiled when he heard that. An unconcealable smile appeared on his adorable little face. Muyaja was stunned. What are you smiling about? Yu stopped smiling and raised his head to look at him. Pursing his lips, he opened up his heart to him, which was a rare sight to see. Daddy, do you know? I'm so happy that you're here today. Muyaja was taken aback by her words. Yu leaned slightly into his embrace and lay on his chest. At an angle that Muyaja couldn't see, the tenderness in his eyes seemed to overflow. He took the initiative to throw himself into the man's arms, but the latter's body inadvertently stiffened a little. Yu actually hugged him. In the past. In his heart, he was actually a little excited. His son had hugged him. This was probably the highest reward. Yu. After a moment's pause for a moment, his. This kind of hug was rare and precious. Daddy, do you know? I hope that you'll be the one to attend the parent-teacher conference, not Mommy. Okay, I promise you that I'll attend your parent-teacher conferences in the future. His promise was as solemn as a vow made at a wedding. His expression was solemn and respectful. This time, however, Yu was so amused that he lost his cool. Daddy, you're so serious. You're so cute. Muyaja. Actually, in the past, Mommy and I relied on each other for survival, and were always looked down upon. I didn't feel wronged, I just felt indignant. Chapter 1582. Yu continued. Grandpa used to ask Mommy to find a good man because he said that if the family didn't have a man of indomitable spirit, others would look down on us. But Mommy has always wanted to be strong. She has always been alone because of my feelings. So I thought that if I didn't have Daddy, I would have to be strong to protect Mommy and this family. Pausing for a moment, a smile appeared on his adorable face. But it's different now. Yu lifted his head from his arms and looked at him seriously. Daddy, I have you. Muyaja looked at him tenderly. Suddenly, he stroked his cheek gently. Yu placed his hand on the back of his father's hand. Daddy, you will always be with Mommy and me, right? Yes, Muyaja said seriously. I will do it. That's great. But Daddy, if you were to resolve today's matter, how would you resolve it? Yu suddenly asked. He was a little curious about how his father would resolve this matter. If he hadn't stepped in this time with his methods, he would have definitely bullied the Lin family. Now that he had the ability and capital to do so, he didn't need to be bullied by others anymore. But since his father had stepped in, he would naturally let him handle it. When Muyaja heard this, he said domineeringly, I won't let anyone who bullies my son off. Yu was once again amused. Very good, that's very Daddy's style. As he spoke, he suddenly asked quietly, Do you know why that brat Lin Feng doesn't see eye to eye with me? Why? Because he has a crush on a girl in class. She's always following me around all day long. That brat is probably jealous, so he's always looking for trouble with me. Yu Yu's tone was as mature as an adult's. It didn't match his adorable appearance at all. Mu Yaja's lips twitched violently. He was still so young, but he already had the entanglement of love and hate in the adult world. Kids these days are so precocious. Because of a girl, he actually started to imitate adults to fight for a girl's affection. Are there many girls who like you in class? Mu Yaja brought up Yu Yu's troubles. He let out a melancholy sigh, and the expression on his face instantly turned gloomy. Yeah, a lot. It's very annoying. Isn't it great? Mu Yaja was very satisfied. Just like me back then. What's so good about it? Those girls are always chattering around me. I don't like it at all. Yu Yu said honestly, I like quiet girls. He liked quiet girls, but he didn't like girls who always surrounded him and weren't reserved at all. Although children at this age might not know anything about love, they simply liked him and wanted to play with him because they were moved. But there were too many people chasing after him, and he couldn't handle it. The girl whom Lin Feng liked was recognized as the cutest girl in the class. He had been in love with her for a long time, but compared to the filthy Lin Feng who played all day long, she preferred the elegantly dressed Yu Yu, who looked like a little prince. Because of this, many girls in class were jealous of Yu Yu. Chapter 1583. As the father and son were talking, the door was pushed open. The principal led Lin Feng's mother and Lin Feng into the room, followed by teacher Yuan. The father and son raised their heads, and saw Lin Feng's mother glaring at them like a tiger watching its prey. It seemed like the principal and Lin Feng's mother had reached a consensus. They were on the same side. As soon as they entered the room, Lin Feng's mother's expression was even more domineering than before. There was a provocative look in her eyes. As soon as she sat down, she announced arrogantly, I've already called my husband. He'll be here soon. She looked as if she was waiting for her husband to come and do something to them. In other words, she was telling him to wait. Mu Yaja remained expressionless while Yu Yu looked disgusted. This was a classic example of using power to oppress others. The principal exchanged a few pleasantries and comforted them. Then he said to Mu Yaja, Mr. Mu Yaja, is it convenient for me to say a few words? He had talked to Lin Feng's mother before. Lin Feng's mother had said that they couldn't let this matter go. They had to give her an explanation. She had to regain her dignity. The principal agreed and promised that he would ask Yu Yu's parents to give her child an explanation and apologize. Therefore, he wanted to take advantage of Lin Feng's mother's situation. He wanted to help Lin Feng's mother regain her dignity. Mu Yaja said coldly, It's not convenient. The principal was stunned. What do you mean? Mu Yaja said coldly. Didn't you ask if it's convenient for me to say a few words? I said it's not convenient. His arrogant reply left the principal dumbstruck. Naturally, he did not know Mu Yaja. He was just the principal of the school. With his status, he had never even seen Mu Yaja, let alone get close to him. When he saw that Mu Yaja was young, he thought that he was a youngster. Therefore, he wanted to use his status as an elder to oppress him. He did not expect to be humiliated at the beginning. The principal said, Mr. Mu, you're being unreasonable. Mu Yaja smiled coldly. Reason is for people to listen to. The principal and Lin Feng's mother didn't know what to say. When Yu Yu heard this, he could not stop laughing. He finally understood who he had inherited his poisonous tongue from. It turned out that he had inherited it from his dear daddy. Who would have thought that his father's venomous tongue would be so frightening? Lin Feng's mother said impolitely, I advise you to keep your mouth clean. Don't make the situation too ugly when my husband comes and embarrass you. The moment she opened her mouth, it was a threat. Her bearing was overbearing. Her attitude was high and mighty. Yu Yu laughed. He raised his head and snickered. Daddy, this auntie actually said that she's going to embarrass you. That's amazing. Although he was snickering, he did not hide the mockery on his face. His voice was not soft either. Therefore, everyone present could hear his mocking laughter loud and clear. Lin Feng's mother was completely enraged. After living for so long, she had actually been mocked by a 7-year-old child. She was flustered and exasperated as she shouted at Mu Yaja. Hey! Look at your son. Aren't you going to discipline him? Look at how young he is. What kind of nonsense is he spouting? Chapter 1584. I don't know how you educate your child. Not only is he like those delinquents in society, fighting and causing trouble, but he's also rude to his elders. He doesn't know how to be polite at all. It's the father's fault for not teaching him well. I really don't know how you teach your child. Her rude words made Teacher Yuan frown. However, she remained silent and did not interrupt. She did not want to get into trouble again. Yu suddenly snorted and asked, Auntie, have you studied before? What do you mean? Yu said coldly, I just want to ask, do you know what the idiom frog in a well means? Lin Feng's mother was furious. Yu smiled. Look at your expression. You don't know what this idiom means, right? Sai, you're so uncultured. She turned to Muyaja. Why don't you teach him a lesson? Muyaja acted as if he did not hear her. He lowered his head and pinched Yu's cheek. Good son, don't tell the truth. Pfft. Yu was amused. However, he looked disgusted. Daddy, the teacher has always taught us that good children don't lie. He paused and continued. Auntie, it was your good son who started it. As the saying goes, don't do to others what you don't want done to you. You're accusing me of violence and fighting, but why don't you think about it? It was clearly your good son who started it. Even if it was school violence, it wasn't caused by me. The law calls it self-defense. Do you understand? I heard that Lin Feng's father is a judge. Since you're from a legal background, are you ignorant of the law? You keep saying that you want my daddy to give you an explanation. Before that, shouldn't you also give me an explanation? Why did you raise such a narrow-minded son who uses vulgar words all the time? You weren't there at the time. How can you judge the right and wrong based on your words alone? It's not up to you to decide whether I discipline him well or not, right? Before you say such things, you should look at your own status. Don't make a fool of yourself. You're really disgraceful. Lin Feng's mother was furious. She thought to herself, this father and son are really refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. I've said all the good things I want to say. Don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. The son is so arrogant, and the father is also so arrogant. Aren't you afraid of suffering in this society? As she scolded the man, she nagged like a shrew on the streets. I'll give you one more chance. Are you apologizing or not? Haha, but there's no use your apology now. I want you to bring the child to my house and apologize in person. Otherwise, I won't acknowledge this debt. Oh, Muyaja sneered, his lips curling into a cold, impatient smile. Madam Lin, are you threatening me? Chapter 1585. She was starting to get excited. Therefore, some unpleasant words came out of her mouth. As the saying goes, nothing can be accomplished without rules. Mr. Mu, you should have heard of this saying before. If you do something wrong as a parent, shouldn't you apologize? Let's put aside the fact that your son injured my baby. Shouldn't you teach your son a lesson for saying such outrageous things? Auntie, you should know that when a child does something wrong, he should be taught a lesson. Why don't you teach your child well? As for me, you don't have to worry about me. Lin Feng's mother was trembling with anger after hearing you use words. She suddenly stood up and walked out of the door. She picked up her phone and made a call. As they were separated by a door, no one knew who she was calling. However, they could vaguely hear her angry voice. Where are you? Husband, come here quickly. Let's teach this father and son who don't know the immensity of heaven and earth a lesson. Muyaja's hearing was amazing, so he caught her words. His lips curled up coldly, but it was a smile. When Lin Feng's mother returned to the office, she was even more arrogant than before. She looked as if she was looking down on everyone. Her eyes were full of contempt and mockery. I don't want to reason with you. My husband will be here soon. If you have anything to say it to him directly. Don't blame me for not reminding you. My husband is a judge in the city hall. You'd better be respectful, or else. This was clearly a threat. After saying that, Lin Feng was about to sit down proudly. Yu mocked him. Typical nouveau riche temperament. It was said that Lin Feng's mother was called Wang Guimiao. Her family was nouveau riche. Her family used to live in a village in the city. Her ancestors had left a few acres of land for the younger generation to build houses. When the land was demolished, they received tens of millions of yuan as compensation. They used it to start a business. It was said that when Lin Feng's father fell in love with Wang Guimiao, he was still a poor university student. Later on, with her support, he became what he was today. The Lin family would bring honor to their ancestors. Yu had already figured out the Lin family's background. Now it seemed that she was a typical nouveau riche. When Wang Guimiao heard this, she almost couldn't sit still. Just as she was about to flare up, she forcefully held it in. Humph! Little vile spawn. She would see how her husband would deal with them when he arrived. She couldn't wait to see Yu's father bow down in front of her husband. When he looked at Muyaja again, he saw that Muyaja had an indifferent look on his face. He was sitting elegantly on the chair, and exuded a noble aura, just like a noble. Wang Guimiao glanced at him, but in her heart she sneered. This man, he is quite good at pretending. Let's see if he can continue pretending when her husband is here. Soon, footsteps could be heard outside the door. A middle-aged man in a coat knocked on the door and walked in. The man was Lin Feng's father, Lin Anghua. Chapter 1586. One was standing, while the other was sitting. Even though he had the advantage of height, Lin Anghua could still feel an unusual sense of oppression from him. Noble, elegant, unruly, and insufferably arrogant. Even though he was just sitting there, expressionless and cold, when the man casually raised his eyes and shot his gaze over, there was a kind of imposing aura that pressured him without being angry. Lin Anghua actually felt an invisible pressure from the young and shockingly handsome man's eyes. He secretly avoided Muyaja's scrutiny and turned his gaze to the side, but there was some anger between his eyebrows. This man's gaze was too intimidating. However, he was a little suspicious. This man looked very familiar, as if he had seen him somewhere before. However, his impression of him was not too deep. This time, he had taken some time off from his busy case, so his mind was still a little muddled. Seeing that it was him, the principal immediately stood up. His expression changed. His face was flushed, but his eyes were full of flattery and pandering. Even though it was restrained, it still gave people an indescribable feeling of discomfort. Judge Lin. You're here. There was no trace of the bureaucratic tone that he had in front of Muyaja. One level higher than the other, one level higher than the other. This was very true. However, Lin Anghua said, Principal, don't call me that. Now that I'm not in the court, you can't call me that. The principal smiled and nodded, but the flattery in his eyes did not decrease at all. He was still cheerfully welcoming Lin Anghua, and waiting for him to sit down. When Wang Guimiao saw him, she immediately went up to him. Hubby, there was a hint of rebuke and coquettishness in her voice, which caught Yu off guard and caused goosebumps to appear all over his body. What a terrifying voice. Damn it. However, Lin Anghua's face still maintained a trace of restraint. After all, he was the chief judge of the Hall of Political Affairs. He was born with a proud background, and had been doing things in the court for many years. As a result, his style of speech was full of strong bureaucratic tone. He was rigid and dignified. He cleared his throat and said in a deep voice, What is it? Your son is being bullied by other children in school. Wang Guimiao complained. Lin Feng, come here, said Lin Anghua. Lin Feng obediently walked over. What happened? Dad. Lin Feng lowered his head. As soon as he said that, tears started rolling down his cheeks. You're a man, don't cry. Lin Anghua pretended to reprimand him, then asked with concern, Tell me, what's the matter? He hit me. Yin Tianyu hit me. Lin Feng pointed at Yu as his aggrieved tears rolled down his cheeks, even more violently. When Lin Anghua heard this, he immediately pulled him in front of him and carefully examined him. He originally thought that it was only his head that was disfigured, but he did not expect that his body was full of scars. It was beyond his expectations. When Lin Anghua saw the bruises on Lin Feng's body, he was furious. He raised his head and looked at Muyaja. Are you Yin Tianyu's father? Muyaja, however, nodded nonchalantly. Yes. Hubby, let me tell you, not only is Yin Tianyu's father arrogant, but his words are also very harsh. Wang Guimiao exaggerated the story, and then crossed her arms in front of her chest, and gave an ultimatum. Anyway, you can deal with this matter as you see fit. Chapter 1587. Linongwa asked again. Did he hit you first? Or did you hit him first? Of course it was that uneducated guy who hit him first. Our Fengfeng has always been a good boy. He never causes trouble. In the end, our Fengfeng was framed and accused of being the one who attacked first. How is that possible? Fengfeng has always been protective of his classmates. Linongwa nodded. I understand. Wang Guimiao was secretly pleased. Her husband was amazing. He had just arrived, and the situation was completely under his control. Look at how Yu's father was so scared that he didn't say a word. He must have been scared out of his wits. Seeing that the situation had changed, she immediately put pressure on the principal. Principal, you have to deal with this matter fairly. Yu's father, you have to give us an explanation today. First, you have to apologize to our child. Then you have to take our child to the hospital for a full body checkup and apologize. This is a must. Then you have to pay for the medical fees, nutrition fees, and compensation for our Fengfeng's psychological damage. You have to be clear about all these. If you have a proper attitude, we won't pursue this matter further. Linongwa walked to Muyaja and sneered. Sir, tell me your name first. Muyaja looked up and said slowly, Muyaja. His voice was clear and cold. He had the elegance of a noble. However, the moment his voice fell, Linongwa was fiercely stunned. Muyaja? This name was too familiar. These three words were like a towering mountain. They resounded like thunder in his ears. How could he not have heard of it before? Could it be the same name? It couldn't be the real Mu Corporation, right? Linongwa wanted to get lucky and said, Your name is so familiar. It's exactly the same as the name of the crown prince of the Mu family. Haha. Muyaja sneered. There's no one else with this name in the capital. Linongwa was stunned again. There was a hint of panic on his face. He stared at him blankly without blinking. He didn't dare to make any wild guesses. After a long while he spoke in a provocative manner, but changed the way he addressed him. You are, what? Linongwa looked a little uneasy. Are you the Chairman Mu of the Mu Corporation? Muyaja was a little impatient. You asked for my name, and I'll tell you. If you have anything to say, just say it. Don't waste my time. My time is more precious than yours. As soon as he finished speaking, Linongwa's eyes widened and he staggered back a step. His eyebrows collapsed helplessly. This man's attitude was very clear. It looked like this time, his blind wife had offended a big shot that she shouldn't have offended. The person in front of him was probably the mysterious and noble crown prince of the Mu Corporation. At first, Linongwa had noticed him when he first entered the door. He only felt that this man had an arrogant aura, and he had the noble aura of a high-ranking official, as if he was a member of a powerful family. However, at this moment, he did not realize where he had seen this handsome face before. Chapter 1588. The Mu family's existence in the capital was enough to shake the entire financial market. As the #1 aristocratic family in the capital, the Mu family's inexhaustible wealth aside, the Mu family's inextricable connections between the black and white was enough to make him weak in the knees. He could offend anyone, but the Mu's offending them was akin to cutting off his own path of retreat. Linongwa wanted to cry but had no tears. He stood in front of Muyaja with a proper posture, but his face was no longer as haughty as before. Instead, his expression was filled with complicated conjecture. Faced with this suffocating atmosphere, for a moment, he did not know how to resolve it, even though he had been in the bureaucracy for a long time. When Wang Guimiao saw this strange scene, she was stunned. Then she walked forward with her arms crossed. She didn't know what had happened, but when she saw Linongwa's dazed appearance, she felt strange. Hubby, what's wrong with you? She was even more confused when she saw his pale face. She could not help but push him. What's wrong? Yu chuckled. He's scared silly. Wang Guimiao was infuriated when she heard that. Things were different now. With Linongwa around, she was confident that she had someone to rely on. Hence, she spoke without thinking. Little b *st*rd, shut up. You don't have the right to speak here. Hearing this, Muyaja's eyes shot up and swept over him with a sharp gaze. Lin Hongua watched with trepidation. Wang Guimiao's words scared him so much that he almost suffocated. How could he have expected that his wife would be so ignorant as to not know how to size up the situation? She opened her mouth and spoke rudely. He immediately became furious and scolded. "Shut up. Don't be unreasonable." It was important to know one's place, but his wife did not know it at all. Thinking that he was teaching Yin Tianyu a lesson for her, she echoed, "That's right. Shut up." Yu suddenly felt like laughing as he looked at his wife, as if she were a pitiful worm. Behind him, Muyaja's face turned uglier. Lin Hongua gritted his teeth, turned his head abruptly, and gave his wife a tight slap. Smack. "I told you to shut up." With that, he turned to face Muyaja with cold sweat dripping down his face. "Chairman Mu, I'm sorry. My wife has been presumptuous in front of you and said something she shouldn't have. A great man won't hold a grudge against a petty person, so please don't take it to heart. Just treat it as if she's spouting nonsense." His tone was full of flattery. Lin Hongua looked at him in cold sweat. Observing his expression, he felt that being in the king's company of a tiger. Everyone, especially Teacher Yuan, was stunned into silence by the sudden turn of events. She thought that, with Lin Honggua's arrival, the boy's father would understand her words and begin to lower his head, apologize to the other party appropriately. As the chief judge of the Hall of Politics and Law, Lin Hongua had several titles above his head. His status was lofty, and he had an unquestionable majesty. What about now, though? Why was Lin Hongua the first to bow down to Muyaja? The principal was even more bewildered. He had no idea what was going on. Wang Guimiao felt the most aggrieved. Chapter 1589. Most importantly, even until now, she still didn't understand how this mysterious slap came about. Why did he slap her? Did she say anything wrong? What kind of insanity was this Lin Hongua suffering from? Was he crazy? Him. Why did he slap her for no reason? Wang Guimiao turned around angrily and pulled Lin Honggua's arm. With a red face, she roared with grievance and hysteria. "Lin Hongua, have you lost your mind?" Lin Hongua looked at her and sighed helplessly. He rolled his eyes at the ceiling and held his forehead. He turned around and pointed at Wang Guimiao. For a moment, he was so angry that he could not say anything. Wang Guimiao was even more confused. She held back her tears and yelled at him. "Say something. Say something. Why did you slap me for no reason? What's wrong with you? Stop talking. Be quiet, and sit back down obediently. Don't say anything, do you understand?" She was like a clown. Not only did she make a fool of herself, but Lin Hongua was also afraid that she would continue to blabber and offend the Mu group. Then her whole family would have no way out. It was not easy for him to get to where he was today. He did not want his bright future to be ruined because of such a small matter. His worry was not unfounded. There were people from the Mu family in the city hall. Although Lin Hongua was a judge and had a good reputation, this man's words could make all his hard work go down the drain. However, he really did not know what to do now that the situation had developed to this stage. He could only hope that his wife, who had always been restless, would not add fuel to the fire. He did not want things to get out of hand when the time came. However, Wang Guimiao did not understand his good intentions. Instead, she questioned him sternly. "Wang Guimiao, I want to ask you, what's wrong with you?" "You." Lin Hongua looked at her in disbelief. He was so impulsive that he wanted to strangle her to death. Why was she so ignorant? Was she trying to get him killed? She was a burden. He looked at her. She could not do anything right, but she was good at ruining things. "You have no right to speak here. Get out of my way." "Lin Hongua, don't be too. Sit there." Lin Honggua's tone suddenly rose, and his sharp eyes signaled. Wang Guimiao's heart suddenly skipped a beat. She was afraid of him from the bottom of her heart. The look in his eyes and the look on his face showed that he was really angry. No matter how unwilling Wang Guimiao was, she could only sit to the side dejectedly and listen obediently. Although she didn't know what she had done wrong, Wang Guimiao could only sit to the side and listen obediently. Lin Hongua turned around and apologized to Muyaja with an incomprehensible reverence. "Chairman Mu, I'm sorry. My wife is insensible and has offended you. Please forgive her. Offended? Mu Yaja cocked a brow, but his voice was filled with an irresistible authority. Judge Lin, how can I dare to take the blame? She just said that she's going to teach us a lesson. Lin Hongguo was so scared that he almost suffocated. He immediately shouted, How dare she? Chairman Mu, she was just joking. Yu Yu crossed her arms and did not give him a way out. She was just joking. She even called me a little b*****. Chapter 1590. The principal watched from the side, trembling with fear. Seeing how respectful Lin Hongguo was to Mu Yaja, he knew how to read people's expressions and size up the situation. Seeing how respectful Lin Hongguo was to Mu Yaja, he thought to himself, how important must this man be? Hence, he kept quiet and did not dare to act rashly. Teacher Yuan's displeasure had also disappeared. When she looked at Mu Yaja, there was a hint of surprise in her eyes. It seemed that this man must be someone of high status. This Lin Hongguo must have found out about his identity, which was why he was so respectful towards him. She recalled how she had advised him to give in to the Lin family and not offend them. Although this man did not show it on his face, the noble and awe-inspiring look in his eyes was still fresh in her memory. At first, she had thought that this man did not know the immensity of heaven and earth, but now that she thought about it, she shuddered. How many things had she said that she should not have said in front of this important person? She did not know if he would take it to heart. At this thought, Teacher Yuan trembled with fear, as if a cat's paw was scratching her heart. She desperately wanted to know who this man was. Why don't we do this? Chairman Mu. Lin Hongguo thought for a moment. Suddenly he carefully probed. I'll ask my wife and son to apologize to your son. I only hope that you won't take my wife's outrageous words to heart. Mu Yaja did not speak. He could not be bothered to argue with him. The boy, however, asked with great interest. How are you going to make amends? How? Lin Hongguo was stunned. Yu Yu raised her eyebrows and asked with a smile. Kneel down. This. However, Lin Hongguo hesitated. In the end, Wang Guimiao could not sit still any longer. She stood up abruptly and said furiously, Hongguo, are you possessed by a ghost? Do you really want me to kneel down? Are you going to agree to such an unreasonable condition? Wang Guimiao felt that Yu Yu's condition was unreasonable. What was even more unreasonable was that her husband was actually hesitating on whether to agree to it. What was the meaning of this? This was simply unbelievable. Yu Yu asked, Is it too much? Isn't that what you said before? You said that you wanted my father and I to kneel down and apologize to you. Weren't you very confident? Such blatant humiliation was still fresh in his memory. Although she didn't say it in front of Mu Yaja, Wang Guimiao shouted it in the office before Mu Yaja came. He heard it loud and clear. Mu Yaja frowned. She said that. Lin Hongguo's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly turned around and asked, Did you really say that? Wang Guimiao panicked. She did say that before, but those were just words spoken in a fit of anger. How could they be taken seriously? Mu Yaja's eyes turned even colder. Haha, Judge Lin, you're really good at disciplining him. Having said that, he carried Yu Yu and stood up. He didn't want to waste his breath on these people. He was furious. He wanted to go back and teach the Lin family a lesson. Otherwise, who did they think his son was? That any Tom, Dick, or Harry could come and bully him. Haha. Chapter 1591. Wang Guimiao was flustered and exasperated. Her eyes were red, but Lin Hongguo's expression was too flustered, to the point that she did not dare to say anything. She vaguely realized that perhaps it was because this man's identity was too powerful that her husband was so careful to plead for leniency. I think it's fine. Mu Yaja said as his gaze fell on Lin Hongguo's arm. Get out of my way. Chairman Mu. Lin Hongguo insisted. Mu Yaja's gaze turned even colder as he gave him a sidelong glance. Lin Hongguo did not dare to be in a stalemate any longer. He could only step aside resentfully and watch him leave with regret. When Mu Yaja left, the office was in an uproar. Wang Guimiao was wiping her tears as she scolded Lin Hongguo. Lin Hongguo was upset. When he heard Wang Guimiao's nagging, he became even more irritated and scolded. Shut up. Haven't you embarrassed yourself enough? Haven't you caused enough trouble? Wang Guimiao, you'll only be satisfied when you see me die, right? Wang Guimiao widened her eyes in shock. What do you mean by that? Lin Onghua was so angry that he could not speak. She went up to him, crying as she questioned. What's going on? Who is he? Why are you giving in to him, and being so respectful to him? To the extent that you want me to kneel down and apologize. Explain yourself. Lin Onghua sat aside angrily, but he was also upset. When he thought of Mu Yaja's deep and sullen gaze before he left, his heart raced, and he could not sit still. Wang Guimiao, I think you're going to play me to death. Wang Guimiao was so anxious that her face turned red. The principal came up to him and asked, Mr. Lin, this. You use father, who is he? You seem to know him. Lin Onghua sneered, but it was more like he was mocking himself. If I could know such a person, everything would be easier. What a pity. I know him, but he doesn't know a nobody like me. This. Teacher Yuan was flabbergasted too. Lin Onghua suddenly said in a low voice. Do you know that this is Mu Yaja, the Mu Group CEO? I've offended him this time. I don't know what he's going to do to me. Mu. Ah. The principal was stunned when he heard that. Mu Group. Isn't the capital's Mu? Oh God. A name that reverberated like thunder in the ears. Impossible, right? Isn't Yun Tianyo's surname Yin? How does his father have anything to do with the Mu Group? The principal mumbled in confusion. How? I just when I saw him. When I his names, that's why I thought of it. Lin Onghua was also extremely regretful. What? Wang Guimiao was stunned. Mu Group. Mu was to Mu. The Mu was of the aristocrats. There Onghua Mu's there. Yue Nouveau Riche might be able to become one overnight. The aristocrats, on the other hand, only appeared once every 300 years. The Mu family was such an aristocratic family. It was a century-old family with deep roots. Chapter 1592. On the other hand, a family like the Mu family was something that they could never hope to catch up to. Wang Guimiao was completely terrified. Even though she was ignorant and inexperienced, she knew that she should never offend the Mu family in the capital. That was a century-old wealthy family with immense power. Mu Yaja carried Yu to his class and packed his bag. He was supposed to attend the parent-teacher meeting in the afternoon, but he was not going to attend it. He decided to transfer his son to Xiaoyichen's school. It was recess time, and it was almost lunchtime, so the class was very noisy. However, when Mu Yaja stepped into the classroom, the huge classroom instantly quieted down. The group of little ones stared at him, and countless pairs of eyes stared at him. Some looked curiously, while others looked anxiously at him. They thought that he was a high-ranking official from the school who had come to inspect the class. Recently, the Ministry of Education had been conducting random inspections of the school's standards. Therefore, high-ranking officials from the Ministry of Education often came in and out. However, when Mu Yaja sat in Yu's seat and started to pack his bag, the group of children suddenly realized that this was Yu's father. Oh my God, he's so tall and handsome. He's even better looking than the celebrities on TV. However, it was Mu Yaja's first time in school, and it was also his first time walking into a class of little ones. It was his first time appearing in school as a parent. He started to pack his bag, but when he sat in front of the low desk, his face immediately darkened. His figure was tall and slender, and when he sat in front of the low desk, the sense of disparity and abruptness was immediately reflected. He moved around in embarrassment, trying to find a suitable angle, but it was in vain. In the end, he found that the bench here was too small, so he was trapped in such a narrow space, and it was difficult for him to make ends meet. On the other hand, Yu enjoyed the process very much. He stood beside Mu Yaja and unceremoniously enjoyed the countless envious and surprised gazes. He accepted all of those stunned gazes, and did not reject any of them. Many children were envious of Yu for having such a young and handsome father. They were children after all. Although they were childish, there were all kinds of comparisons between them. At most, they would compare their parents. They would compare whose mother was younger and prettier, whose father was more handsome, whose family was wealthier. It was more or less these. Mu Yaja glanced at Yu. At that moment, the little one had his hands behind his back. Mu Yaja was full of smiles. He was very happy and proud of himself. If it was in the past, he would have been envious. He would have enviously looked at other students' fathers. Now he had become the object of envy. He was in a good mood. Muyaja pursed his lips and could not help laughing. He was after all a 7-year-old child. Although some of his thoughts were childish, they were extremely cute. When Muyaja was packing his bag, some students quietly surrounded him and asked about his well-being. Classmate A. Yu, is this handsome uncle your father? Yu. Yes. Classmate A. Wow. Yu, I'm so envious of you. Your father is so handsome. Yu. Of course. If my father isn't handsome, why would he give birth to me so cute? Classmate A cupped his face and looked infatuated. Muyaja. Chapter 1593. Classmate B said, your daddy looks so young. He looks like a celebrity on TV. Can I take a picture with your daddy? Yu replied, sure. All the little kids exclaimed, wow, that's awesome. Me too. Count me in. As Yu was feeling smug, he walked over to Muyaja and whispered into his ear, Daddy, cooperate with me. Muyaja's lips twitched slightly. At this moment, he even wanted to hug Yu tightly. He was afraid that he would float into the sky in the next second. However, looking at the little kid's smug expression, Muyaja felt a tinge of sweetness in his heart. His son was proud of him. This made him happy. It turned out that it was such a wonderful feeling to be proud of a son. As he thought of this, Muyaja's mood improved. He raised his eyebrows and asked, how do you want me to cooperate? You just have to sit there and don't move. Hence Muyaja was like a model. He maintained his upright posture. Next, he was surrounded by the little kids and they jostled and jostled for a few group photos. He didn't like to be photographed. Even the reporters with the best methods didn't have the chance to take a picture of him from the front. Now, these little kids were taking advantage of Yu's relationship with him. There were also a number of infatuated little girls who were anxious to take a picture with him and secretly touched his slender hand. Muyaja didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Classmate C said, your daddy is so beautiful. Why don't I exchange places with you? I'll give you my daddy and you give me your daddy. When Yu heard this, his expression became serious and cold. No. Why not? I don't want your daddy. I only have one daddy. As she spoke, Yu leaned against Muyaja's side and held onto his arm. It was as if she was declaring her sovereignty and protecting her unquestionable position. Everyone sighed in disappointment. Muyaja looked at little Munchkin, who was about to fly into the sky. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he covered his face. However, his eyes were filled with love. Even though she felt that Yu's smug look was hilarious, she also felt that he was extremely cute. As Muyaja helped him pack his bag, he stopped to flip through Yu's textbook. However, when he flipped open Yu's history class notes, he saw the delicate and beautiful handwriting in the book. The entire book was neat and tidy. Other than the signs of pages being folded, it looked like a new book that had just been handed out. He could tell that Yu was more serious in class. He thought about how he had flipped through Xiao Yichen's textbook in the past. Even though they were brothers, in terms of academics, the difference between the two of them was like heaven and earth. After packing his bag, the group of little kids saw Muyaja carrying Yu and looking like he was about to leave. They all surrounded him and asked, Yu, school hasn't ended yet. Are you leaving already? Yu, where are you going? Yu said, I have something to do. I have to go home. You guys focus in class. He only said that perfunctorily and didn't tell them that he was going to transfer schools. Firstly, it was because he had a headache dealing with these little kids. If they knew that he was going to transfer schools, they would definitely pester him nonstop and not let him go. One couldn't underestimate his charm. Chapter 1594. It had only been a month since school started, but the children in his class liked him very much. If they knew that he was going to transfer schools, they would definitely cry their hearts out. It was easy for children to become emotionally dependent. All right. Everyone was reluctant to see him leave. Goodbye, Yu. Goodbye, Yu, Daddy. The children walked Yu and Muyaja to the entrance of the classroom and watched them leave. Muyaja carried Yu. When he turned around and saw the scene of them sending him off, he could not help but smack his son's butt. Son, you're really popular in class. Yu snickered. Daddy is very popular too. The little guys in the class all like you very much. Little guys? Muyaja was amused by his son's adjective. Baby, you're the same age as them. You call them little guys as if you're an old man. When Yu heard this, he suddenly hugged his son's neck and kissed him on the cheek. Daddy, it's great that you're here today. Muyaja was stunned. Then he smiled and asked, What do you mean? I'm very happy today. Because your appearance proves that I'm just like them. I have a daddy who loves and dotes on me. Yu's little bit of self-esteem was greatly satisfied. Actually, his self-esteem was different from the children's. In the past, he really envied those children. They had a daddy, a mommy, and a happy family of 3. Today, his daddy was like a god who had descended from the sky and appeared by his side. Yu gently rested his head on his shoulder. His pink lips curved slightly as he snickered. To be honest, I've been dreaming of this day for as long as I can remember. In the past, he had imagined that when he was in school, his daddy would suddenly appear at the classroom window like the other children's fathers. He would look at him gently and lovingly. He had been waiting for this moment for a very, very long time. Muyaja carried him. Although he had a heavy backpack on his arm, he did not find it strenuous at all. While she was gratified to hear the boy's confession, she also tasted a tinge of heartache. As lucky as he was, meeting Yin Shirshir was the luckiest thing that had ever happened to him. Because of her, he had a pair of obedient sons. After he carried Yu into the car, Muyaja drove back to the office of the office. If Headmaster Dong smiled politely. Hey, Chairman Mu. What are you saying? This is what I should do. Haha. Daddy, your office is so big. Is it? Chapter 1595. Yu nodded and gave a more pertinent comment. Yes, it's a little bigger than my office. Muyaja was speechless. This little guy. He did not bother to hide the arrogance and insolence in his words. He had really surpassed his father. His son, while he was still studying business, was already managing a company. But I don't like business. I always feel that it looks a little lifeless. In comparison, I prefer things with a technological feel. As he spoke, he was suddenly attracted by a pile of documents on the desk. He could not help but reach out to take them. Muyaja, on the other hand, seemed to be deliberately going against him as he quickly stopped the boy's hand from reaching out to grab it. Facing Yu's puzzled gaze, Muyaja blinked lightly and said mysteriously, Baby, these are the financial group's trade secrets. With that, he narrowed his eyes and pretended to be wary as he sized him up. Yu's eyes twitched violently. Daddy, you're wary of me. Do you think I'm wary of you? You broke through Dishing Financial Group's defense network so easily. I can't guard against you even if I wanted to. Of course. Yu snorted proudly. That's why I can't let you see these trade secrets. Yu's smile froze. Then he huffed and crossed his arms. Emph. Daddy, you're so petty. I'm just taking a look. I won't do anything. Can you understand them? Of course. Perhaps, I can give you some original suggestions. That good. Muyaja teased him. Of course. Then you, show me how to read these documents. Yu made an okay gesture and took the documents. He sat on the desk, placed the documents on his lap, and flipped through them page by page. He was small, and Muyaja's desk was wide, long, and huge. Hence, when he sat cross-legged on the desk, he looked even smaller and skinnier. His chin gradually became sharper. In the past, it was still a little pink, but now it had a handsome face. Muyaja gazed at his side profile. Yu quietly lowered his head and flipped through the documents. Perhaps it was because of the high temperature in the office. He loosened his tie casually. His casual action was gentlemanly and charming. When he grew up, the number of fans that would follow him would probably line up from Beijing to Paris. While Yu was reading the documents for him, he thought for a while and called Lu Jinyu. Lu Jinyu was a mysterious subordinate of his. According to seniority, the man addressed him as Big Boss while Muyaja addressed him as Fourth Boss. Lu Jinyu looked like a gentle and refined man, but he was the most cunning one among his subordinates. The call went through quickly. Before Muyaja could say anything, Lu Jinyu smiled and said, Boss, what orders do you have for me this time? Lu Jinyu was used to going straight to the point. This was because he knew that time and efficiency were Muyaja's pursuit. He never liked to bluff. Muyaja ordered, Jinyu, find out about Lin Onggwa from the Legal Affairs Hall. Check his background. Haha boss, did this Lin Onggwa offend you? Chapter 1596. Lu Jinyu laughed sinisterly. The Hall of Political Affairs is an organization set up by the government. Naturally, the people inside are not simple. But boss, you should know that not many of the people in the Hall of Political Affairs are clean. If you want to find out the background of this person, I might be able to find a lot of interesting things for you. This Lin Onggwa is a bluff. He's very arrogant. If it were in the past, I wouldn't be willing to stoop to the level of a small fry like him. But today he's made me a little unhappy. At the end of his sentence, Muyaja's voice suddenly deepened, and he gave a certain hint. On the other hand, Lu Jinyu received his hint and immediately said, Boss, don't worry. The thing you want, I'll get it for you by tomorrow at the latest. When the time comes, you can do whatever you want with him. Okay. Let me know as soon as possible. Lu Jinyu agreed. After the call ended, Muyaja stood up and walked to Yu Yu's side. The little munchkin was focused on flipping through the case. He glanced through 10 lines at a time and circled some data from time to time. He smiled satisfactorily and gently rubbed his little head. Walking to one side, he picked up an apple and sat on the sofa to peel it for him. After peeling the apple, he carefully cut it into small slices and skewered them with toothpicks before bringing them to the little munchkin's hand. His cell phone suddenly rang. Muyaja picked up his cell phone and glanced at the screen. It was an unknown number. After answering the call, an unfamiliar man's cautious voice came from the other end. Hello. May I know if you're Chairman Mu from Dishing Financial Group? Muyaja smiled slightly. Although the other party did not state his identity, he immediately guessed who this person was. As the head of the city hall, you're indeed very capable. But don't you think it's inappropriate to use your power to investigate my personal number? Jiang Hongwei was shocked. He thought to himself that this Muyaja was indeed not simple. He had already guessed who he was before he had even revealed his identity. At the same time, he felt guilty. In a moment of desperation, he had indeed used his power to investigate Muyaja's personal number through the internal network. However, Jiang Hongwei had been in the government for many years. He was also an old fox. He avoided the important points and dwelt on the trivial points. He quickly avoided this topic. Haha. Chairman Mu, it's like this. Just now I got the news. I heard that your men are collecting information about Lin Onggwa. I'd like to ask what's going on. Did he offend you? Jiang Hongwei was over 50 years old. To be able to sit in such a position as the city hall director, he was definitely not an ordinary person. Even if there was a slight disturbance, he would be extremely alert. As soon as he gave the order and Lu Jinyu did something, the news reached Jiang Hongwei's ears. People like them had always been very sensitive to this kind of thing. They had called in a hurry just to sound out the situation. Muyaja couldn't be bothered to pay attention to him. He lazily asked, What do you think? His words had a deep meaning, but it made Jiang Hongwei even more worried. Chairman Mu, tell me, how did Lin Onggwa offend you? Offend you? Muyaja laughed mockingly. I'm afraid it's not appropriate for you to ask me this question. Chapter 1597. Muyaja said slowly, The people in the city hall are all so capable. Director Jiang, if you don't control your subordinates, you won't be able to protect yourself if something fishy happens to them. These words made Jiang Hongwei extremely anxious. For someone as experienced as him, he could naturally sense that something was amiss with just a few words. It seemed that Lin Onggwa had offended the person he shouldn't have offended the most. However, he had already expected this to happen. His phone call was just to sound out Lin Onggwa. Naturally, he didn't care about Lin Onggwa. Still, after working together for so many years, some interests were intertwined. Jiang Hongwei was worried that Lin Onggwa would be foolish enough to provoke Muyaja into a fit of rage. If that were to happen, the whole city hall would be wiped out in one fell swoop. It wasn't easy for him to climb to his current position. He had worked hard for more than 20 years, and settled down in the political arena, where there was a knife hidden behind a smile for many years to achieve the glory he had today. He couldn't just let someone drag him down and take him down from his position. For people like them, benefits were intertwined. Hence, when necessary, he had to cast aside all his relationships to prevent himself from falling into the water. That would not be worth the loss. Chairman Mu, it seems that Lin Ongwa must have caused you trouble. I didn't mean anything else by making this call. I just wanted to ask, how are you going to deal with him? By the way, Chairman Mu, I hope that you won't implicate the innocent because of Lin Ongwa. As he said this, Jiang Hongwei laughed awkwardly. Mu Yaja chuckled along too, but he quickly stopped laughing. His voice deepened, but it was filled with an irresistible authority. Implicating the innocent? Haha. Let's see how you stand on this matter, Director Jiang. Anyway, this Lin Ongwa isn't reliable. He uses his status to do whatever he wants. If you keep such a subordinate by your side, he will only harm you. As for how I'm going to deal with him, you don't have to ask. If you know what's good for you, you probably know what to do next. Jiang Hongwei was silent for a while on the other end of the phone. He suddenly understood and said with a smile, Chairman Mu, don't worry. I understand what you mean. Next, I'll do what you want me to do. After saying this, he thanked him profusely and hung up the phone. Less than 15 minutes later, Lu Jinyu called to say that an anonymous email had been sent to his mailbox. The email contained some evidence against Lin Ongwa. How could a person like Lin Ongwa not have any stains on him? For the time being, let's not talk about his corruption and bribery. Just the fact that he had embezzled a few bad assets through his connections with the government and business, and through his friends, he reinvested and rebuilt them. Moreover, the stolen money amounted to more than 1 billion, which was enough to send him to prison for the rest of his life. There was no need to think too much of him. Jiang Hongwei wasn't stupid. He was a shrewd person. Seeing Lin Ongwa's decline, he couldn't just sit by and watch. He also couldn't let himself be dragged down by him. Lin Ongwa was a very capable person. As his chess piece, he had also obtained many benefits for him. However, a chess piece was a chess piece after all. He had no value to be used, so he should be abandoned. Chapter 1598. He was a sly old fox. Since he was working with Lin Ongwa, he naturally had a backup plan. Mu Yaja said, since someone has sent you these documents, you should know what to do next. On the other end of the line, Lu Jinyu laughed inwardly. Jiang Hongwei is indeed a sly old fox. He's really good at adding insult to injury. This kind of person is not easy to control. Fortunately, I still have some evidence of his crimes in my hands. Mu Yaja hummed in acknowledgement before changing the topic. You can handle this matter. I'm at ease with you handling it. What are you talking about, boss? When have I ever made a mistake? Just wait for my news. With that, he hung up the phone. Mu Yaja got up and walked to Yu. He saw that the stack of cases beside him had already been dealt with. He picked them up and glanced at them. When his gaze fell on the comments at the end, he raised his eyebrows in surprise. Yu was fully focused on reviewing the last document. When he looked up, he saw Mu Yaja's shocked expression. He was puzzled. Daddy, what's wrong? Mu Yaja was still in a daze. He had thought that Yu was just being perfunctory when he said that he was going to review the documents for him. He did not expect that this guy would actually read through the documents seriously. He even drew out all the illogical parts of the documents and gave his own explanations. It was clear at a glance. Daddy, there's a problem with the financial affairs of the organization. Yu said meaningfully. Mu Yaja sneered. There's something fishy about the financial affairs. It's nothing more than those sly old foxes from the Mu family stirring up trouble right under my nose to get a bigger share of the pie. However, they're timid and don't dare to do anything big. Haha. They're so naive to think that I can't see through them. Yu clicked his tongue twice and sighed. No matter how high a mountain is, it's still made of rocks. Even if it's a small problem, once it gets worse, it'll be very serious. I know what to do. After saying that, Mu Yaja looked at him with gratification and couldn't help but scratch the bridge of his nose dotingly. Your shrewdness is just like your father's. Using me to boast, Daddy doesn't know how to be ashamed. Yu stuck her tongue out mischievously. Then she hooked her arms around his shoulders and snuggled into his embrace. Daddy, I miss Mommy. I miss her so much. I feel like I haven't seen her for hundreds of years. As he spoke, his little face collapsed in grievance, but his eyes were filled with sadness. Muyaja's face darkened slightly. For the past few days, Yin Shirshir had not sent any messages. As for Yu, the most recent time they had been in contact was during a video call last weekend. In the video call, Yin Shirshir was dressed in an ancient costume. She didn't even have time to remove her exquisite makeup. Her clothes were scattered, and she wore a golden hairpin with tassels on her head. She couldn't hide her fatigue. When she had the video call with him, she had been secretly hiding in the changing room during a break in filming. She had purposely lowered her voice when she spoke. After that, other than a few messages, they had lost contact. Yu could only pitifully find out about Yin Shirshir's updates from the production team's official Weibo account. He missed her dearly. For the past few days, Xiao Yichen wasn't as active as before. Sometimes, he would sit quietly on the sofa and browse the official Weibo account of the production team of Lethal Beauty. Chapter 1599. Yu said, "It's Mommy's birthday next Monday. I've always been the one to celebrate Mommy's birthday in the past." As he spoke, he was reminded of Yin Shirshir's busy schedule. After a pause, he said resentfully, "But Mommy is on set this year. Daddy, can't you think of a way?" Upon hearing this, Muyaja fell silent. At night, an uninvited guest appeared outside Xiangti Walk. It turned out that Lin Onghua, who had caught wind of the news, had brought his wife and son to Yu's doorstep to beg for Muyaja's forgiveness. Lu Jinyu acted quickly, and Lin Onghua was well informed. When he heard the news that night, he felt uneasy. Hence, he personally brought his wife to apologize to them. Otherwise, his life would be ruined. Muyaja was in the study. Hence, Yu put on a coat and walked out of the door. He saw Lin Onghua and Wang Guimiao standing outside, looking uneasy and frightened. When they saw him, they looked as if they had seen their savior. Both of them went up to him and pleaded with him through the luxurious iron door. Yu, is Chairman Mu home? Let me see Chairman Mu, will you? All right. Uncle is begging you." At this moment, Lin Onghua was no longer as arrogant and overbearing as before. His worried face was full of helplessness. Beside him, Wang Guimiao looked even worse. She was bloated and looked gloomy. Her eyes were red and swollen, as if she had been crying miserably. At this moment, she was no longer wearing the exquisite makeup she had been wearing in the afternoon. Her face was gloomy and gloomy. After leaving school today, Lin Onghua had given Wang Guimiao and Lin Feng a good scolding, but he still could not vent his anger. Wang Guimiao felt wronged and indignant. However, she was stubborn, so she retorted stubbornly. In a fit of anger, Lin Onghua looked at her sternly and slapped her in front of everyone in the office. Wang Guimiao and Lin Feng were stupefied. After being married for so many years, the couple had always been very harmonious. The reason why Lin Onghua could be where he was today was because of the support of the Wang family. Therefore, even if there were many things about Wang Guimiao that made him unhappy, he still tolerated them. Today was the first time he had hit her. Wang Guimiao couldn't believe it. Filled with anger and grievance, she burst into tears in front of so many people. However, Lin Onghua didn't comfort her like before. Looking at her, he felt even more embarrassed. He had long lost his patience with her. Wang Guimiao did not study much. Not only was she uncultured, but she also had a low EQ, which caused him a lot of trouble. He had repeatedly warned her that there would always be someone better than her. When she was outside, she should not be too arrogant and domineering. Instead, she should keep a low profile. Given his position, he had to be careful in everything he did. The slightest carelessness could lead to a bottomless abyss. There was nothing wrong with keeping a low profile. How many people had died because of their high-profile style? However, Wang Guimiao did not understand this logic. Today, she had caused a huge disaster for him. Thus, even when she cried, he couldn't be bothered to comfort her. He was still worried about it. His heart was in a mess. He didn't know what to do at the moment. Wang Guimiao was crying beside him, which made him even more upset. The couple had a big fight because of this. Chapter 1600. In his anger, Lin Onghua yelled at her, "Wang Guimiao, oh Wang Guimiao, do you know who you've offended today? Do you know? The person I've offended today can kill me with just one finger." Perhaps with just one word from him, my great future will be ruined. She shouted disapprovingly. What are you afraid of? Don't you still have my family? Why are you so agitated? She was so self-righteous that it was impossible to reason with her. Lin Hongguo was so angry that he laughed. His face was ferocious, and he had never lost control like this before. Haha, Wang Guimiao, I told you that you're a frog in a well, but you don't believe me. How powerful do you think your Wang family is? It's just tens of millions in assets. In other people's eyes, the Wang family is just a nouveau riche. Do you understand nouveau riche? Do you think you have the ability to go against the Mu family? It can't be that serious, right? What do you mean it can't be that serious? Don't you know how much the Mu group has? Hundreds of billions in assets. What kind of concept is that? There are many interests behind them. Even if they don't cover the sky with one hand, they're still a first-class family in the capital. Do you know what it means to offend the Mu family? They have connections in both the underworld and the government. With their background, who cares who you are? It's just a matter of opening and closing their mouths. I think you're muddle-headed. You still haven't recognized this point. LF** King. Lin Hongguo was so angry that he gritted his teeth. He pointed at her and said word by word. My F** King brilliant life will be ruined by your hands sooner or later. No. He paused and said sternly, the Lin family and the Wang family will both be ruined by your hands. These words were said in anger to scare her. However, he didn't expect that his words would come true. Lin Hongguo didn't expect Mu Yaja to make a move so quickly. The storm came suddenly and violently. After he heard the news, his mind went blank for a moment. According to the insider, Mu Yaja's side had already obtained some evidence of his crimes. The next step was to hand this evidence over to the Commission for Discipline Inspection. What was left was probably the end of his world. Over the years, Lin Hongguo had done a lot of things. His black income should be more than 1 billion, and this was not a small amount. 1 billion was more than enough to sentence him to death, let alone prison. He was so scared that his heart palpitated on the spot. Wang Guimiao was so scared that she gave him 2 quick-acting heart-relieving pills before he recovered. Logically speaking, given how careful he was with his actions, it was unlikely that he would leave behind any incriminating evidence. Therefore, he was also skeptical about it. However, when he dialed Jiang Hongwei's number, Jiang Hongwei only vaguely reminded him, Haha, Hongguo, now that something like this has happened, you can only pray for yourself. After saying that, he hung up the phone. Lin Hongguo was suddenly frightened. When he called again, he could not get through. Since Jiang Hongwei had already said so, he immediately felt disheartened. He went limp and fell to the ground, unable to come back to his senses for a long time. His first reaction was to run. Take the money and escape abroad, the further the better. However, when he thought about it carefully, even if he wanted to escape, where could he escape to? Mu Yaja must have had a backup plan. If he wanted to escape, it would be difficult for him to do so. He was determined to toy with him until he died. This man was rumored to be ruthless, but he had seen it with his own eyes. He was indeed ruthless. He didn't leave him any way out. Chapter 1601. He was in so much pain at the thought of his many years of hard work being destroyed in one day. He made a lot of phone calls, but he realized that he had accumulated so many connections overnight, but now, none of them had heard of him. At times like this, he had to be careful of which side he chose. If he was not careful, he would be implicated. No one was willing to help him, lest they get into trouble. He thought for a while and finally decided to bring Wang Guimiao to apologize to him personally. Perhaps he would be lucky enough to get his forgiveness. Thus the scene before him was born. Yu Yu stood expressionlessly at the door. He looked at the pleading couple without a trace of emotion in his eyes. How pitiful. Yu Yu said this coldly with an indifferent expression. Lin Hongguo saw his expression, and was shocked by the little guy's calm state of mind. Usually, children of this age would run to their parents in fright upon seeing such a scene. However, at this moment he stood at the door with his arms crossed and a cold expression on his face. Wang Guimiao looked at him with an ugly expression and felt extremely remorseful. She could not figure it out and found it strange. She had known about Yin Tianyu since he was in kindergarten, but she had only heard that he had a mother. She had never heard of him having a father. In the parents' group, it was said that the child was from a single-parent family and could not even be considered a single-parent family. His mother was still unmarried, so no one could say for sure how the child came about. It was said that he was an illegitimate child. His mother gave birth to him at the age of 18, which was an unmarried pregnancy. Many people looked down on her and despised her from the bottom of their hearts. Wang Guimiao looked down on her even more. Without an indomitable man in the family, it was indeed easy for people to gossip. A single mother would be subjected to a lot of malicious speculation and slander. Today, however, this child had a father out of nowhere. Moreover, this man's status was not low and was incomparably noble. He was actually one of the top figures in the Mu family. Even now, she still felt that she was in a dream. Who asked her to be unlucky, though? The only thing to blame was that she should not have gone overboard. Lin Onguo went up to him and begged again. "Little master, can you please invite your father out? I have something to ask of you." "What is it? Can't you tell me?" Yu said casually. Lin Onguo was embarrassed for a moment, but he knew that this child was obviously making things difficult for him. Thus his face turned red. He clenched his teeth and actually knelt on the ground with a plop. It was late at night and the ground was cold. He knelt down, almost without hesitation. Yu was not surprised to see him kneel down. At the same time, she looked at Lin Onguo meaningfully and smiled. "Mr. Lin, why are you doing this? What are you trying to do?" "Little lord, I'm here to apologize to you and your father." As Lin Onguo spoke, he fiercely pulled Wang Guimiao. Wang Guimiao was caught off guard and fell to her knees as well. A sharp pain came from his knee. However, she couldn't care about anything else. In any case, he had already lost all his face, and there was nothing he could do to regain it. Chapter 1602. Even though she did not believe it, Wang Guimiao knew that Lin Onguo was in a panic. Lin Onguo said that the Mu family had secretly obtained some evidence of his crimes. If they didn't take any action and beg the Mu family to be merciful, the only thing that awaited the Lin family and the Wang family would be death. Wang Guimiao knew a little about Lin Onguo's actions in the past few years. She knew that if the evidence of his crimes was in the hands of others, it would be as good as having his life in the hands of others. Hence, she did not care about her pride anymore. She knelt down and kowtowed as hard as she could under Lin Onguo's gaze. "Yu, Auntie was wrong. Auntie was really wrong. Auntie shouldn't have called you a little b** starred. Auntie shouldn't have listened to those rumors and humiliated you and your mother. Auntie knows her mistake. Can you forgive me?" Then, she kowtowed as hard as she could. She was really kowtowing. She knocked her forehead on the ground so hard that her skin was bruised. However, she did it on purpose. She wanted to put on an act for him to see. A little bruise was nothing. If she could beg the Mu family to be merciful, so what if she got bruised and bled a little? Yu yawned and said lazily, Okay, I know, I forgive you." Lin Onguo was overjoyed when he heard that. "Really?" Wang Guimiao was surprised. She looked up with her eyes wide open and smiled through her tears. She was in a sorry state and her hair was disheveled. She looked disgusting. Yu did not want to look at her. Why should I be so calculative with an uncultured person? So now, all of you can disappear from my sight. Then, Lin Onguo and Wang Guimiao looked at each other in surprise. They did not expect that it would be so easy to get forgiveness. They had to admit that children were easy to trick. Just a little bit of self-injury and she would be soft-hearted. Lin Onguo rubbed his hands and chuckled. He asked tentatively, "Then that tainted evidence. What evidence?" Yu raised her eyebrows in confusion. "It's like this. Chairman Mu, can you plead for me? Ask him to be merciful and let me off. Don't hand over those things to the Commission for Discipline Inspection." Yu was confused. "I don't know what you're talking about. It's so cold outside. I'm going home." "Wait." Like a drowning man, Lin Onguo called out to him hoarsely and asked, Yu, didn't you forgive your uncle?" "Yes, that's right." Then can you ask your father to let me go?" "This doesn't seem to work." Yu's lips curled into a sinister smile. "My daddy hates you." Lin Onguo froze. Beside him, Wang Guimiao's joy turned to sorrow. The smile on her face froze in an instant, and despair appeared in her eyes. Yu said slowly, "No one can change my daddy's decision. I'm sorry, Uncle Lin." After that, he smiled elegantly like a little gentleman and turned to go back to the villa. The door slammed shut, completely isolating Lin Hongua and Wang Guimiao from begging for mercy. That night it rained heavily. Lin Hongua and Wang Guimiao did not dare to leave. They insisted on kneeling at the door for the whole night. Yu ignored them. Chapter 1603. When the sun was about to rise, Yu got out of bed and opened the curtains, only to find the two still kneeling by the door. Wang Guimiao was in a daze and on the verge of collapsing as she leaned on Lin Hongua. After kneeling in the rain for an entire night, the two of them fainted on the ground. Not long after, they were carried away by the ambulance. Lu Jinyu was also very efficient. After sorting out the documents, he submitted the evidence of Lin Honggua's crimes to the disciplinary committee. Soon the documents were issued. Lin Hongua was taken away for investigation. After the investigation, Lin Hongua was accused of corruption, embezzlement, collusion with illegal businesses, embezzlement of non-performing assets, and embezzlement of more than 1 billion yuan. This case caused a huge uproar. Even the Wangs were implicated and their family assets were destroyed. Of course, this was all in the future. Before the admission procedures were completed, it happened to be Friday. Yu asked Li Hanlin to drive him to the supermarket to buy some baking ingredients. He planned to bake a birthday cake for Yin Shishir when he got home. He was the one who had made the cake last year. However, at that time, he had just started baking and was not very familiar with it. Hence, the cake did not taste good. However, Yin Shishir liked it very much. This time, Yu secretly decided that he must bake a super delicious cake for Mommy's birthday. He would send it to Mommy when he visited her at work. When he got home, Yu rushed into the kitchen and skillfully separated the egg yolk from the egg white. He then mixed the egg white evenly with the egg whisk. He was already extremely familiar with this series of processes. In the past, he would often bake some small cakes as a snack. He used a mold to create a heart-shaped cake embryo and placed it in the oven. Then he started to think about what kind of cake he should make. After much consideration, he decided to draw a cartoon version of the family portrait on the cake. When Mu Yaja got home, he heard some noises coming from the kitchen. He walked in quietly and saw Yu with his head lowered. He was so focused that he did not notice Mu Yaja's presence behind him. He was making a fondant cake. At this moment, the cartoon version of the character was more than half done. Yu was very focused. Under the warm light, his handsome eyebrows and youthful side profile looked gentle and charming. From the side, his long and thick eyelashes were slightly lowered. His gaze was as gentle as water and his lips were slightly curved, as if he was smiling. Mu Yaja looked at his hands. It turned out that he was making a cartoon version of Yin Shishir. He held the fondant sculpture in his hands gently and carefully, as if he was holding her in his hands. His and Little Ichen's figurines were already made on the cake. After he was done with Yin Shishir, he began to work on Mu Yaja's character. Mu Yaja's interest was piqued. He was curious as to how he would look in this little guy's hands. Yu first made a round face for him, then a round body. Then he picked up a pen and dipped it in the icing. As if he was playing a prank, Yu deliberately drew a fierce face for Mu Yaja. When Mu Yaja saw this, he frowned slightly and said unhappily, "Why did you draw me so fierce?" "Wah!" Yu was startled by the sudden sound behind him. His hand trembled, and the pen drew a distorted line on the doll's face. Thus, Mu Yaja's mouth became crooked. Mu Yaja was speechless. Chapter 1604. He looked at the sugar figurine with a crooked mouth and turned around, feeling wronged. He said angrily, "Daddy, why did you stand behind me without saying a word? It's very scary, okay? I didn't do it on purpose. Who knows how timid you are?" Mu Yaja said innocently, "Look at the birthday cake you made. The three of you look so cute, but you made me look fierce. I object." Objection overruled. Yu held up the sugar figurine in his hand and looked left and right. He compared it to the real person and suddenly expressed his opinion. "It's very similar. Mu Yaja. It's your fault for always pulling a long face." Yu then looked at the crooked mouth of the sugar figurine and laughed. "Daddy, you're so pitiful. Your mouth is crooked. It's all your fault. Muyaja said, feeling wronged. Yu Yu retorted, it's your fault for not saying a word when you came in. You stood behind me and gave me a fright. Otherwise, I wouldn't have failed. Muyaja smiled and hugged him from behind. He rested his chin on little Munchkin's shoulder and looked at his frosted hand. He couldn't help but laugh. Is this your birthday present for Mommy? Yes. Yu Yu fixed the adorable Muyaja figure on the cake, and then remembered to finish it. He continued what he was doing and asked, Daddy, does the cake look good? Muyaja thought seriously for a while and then commented, it's not bad. What do you mean by not bad? Yu Yu protested unwillingly. I think it's great. Can I eat the sugar figurine on the cake? Other than Mommy and me, you can eat the rest. Yu Yu said generously. Muyaja frowned but pretended to be unhappy and teased him. Why can I only eat mine and Xiao-Yi-chen's but not yours and Mommy's? Hehe. Because Mommy's are the cutest, no one is allowed to eat them. After completing the last step, Yu Yu looked at the finished product and reveled in her exquisite craftsmanship. What a beautiful cake. I made it myself. Mommy will definitely like it. After speaking, Yu Yu turned around and hooked her arm around Muyaja's shoulder. Daddy, when are we going to visit the set? When Xiao-Yi-chen is out of school, we'll visit the set. Long live. Yu Yu was elated. I can finally see my dearest Mommy. Last night, I missed her so much that I couldn't sleep. Mommy must have forgotten that today is her birthday. I must give her a birthday surprise from the sky. Muyaja scratched his nose affectionately. Okay. When Xiao-Yi-chen came home from school at 3 o'clock, he saw Yu Yu placing the finished cake in the kitchen. He went over and looked at it for a long time. He was so hungry that he almost drooled. He turned around and ran over to Yu Yu, chirping happily like a little bird. Yu Yu, did you personally make that birthday cake for Mommy? Yes. I made it. Yu Yu was very pleased with herself. Xiao-Yi-chen was very hungry. He pestered him and asked, when are we going to visit her at the set? Last night, the three of them had discussed that on her birthday, they must visit the set and give Yin Shirshir a birthday surprise. The two little lads were so excited about their birthday that they couldn't sleep well. Chapter 1605. Yu Yu snorted. Mommy will definitely like my cake more. Xiao-Yi-chen whimpered and looked down pitifully. Yu Yu, you're a bully. Are you saying that my present isn't nice? I can't help it. It's your fault for being so stupid. But you're so stupid, so you've already improved a lot. Xiao-Yi-chen wagged his tail again. Really? I think so too, hee. Then he pestered Muyaja and asked, Daddy, what birthday present did you prepare for Mommy? Muyaja smiled deeply and pressed his slender fingers against his lips, pretending to be mysterious. Xiao-Yi-chen shouted, Stingy. Daddy is so stingy. Just as Yu Yu had expected, Yin Shirshir had indeed forgotten that it was her birthday today. She was completely unaware of the upcoming birthday surprise. Early in the morning, she rushed to the set, changed into an ancient costume, put on makeup, and participated in the filming. The sun was shining brightly these few days, so there were many outdoor scenes. Yin Shirshir was inevitably nervous because it was her first time using a wire. On the set, Director Gu and the martial arts master were nervously discussing the upcoming wire scene. Yin Shirshir changed into a pink silk dress. The next scene was her encounter with the male lead, Yin Cheng, played by Hua Jin. In the plot, the prince's mansion was holding a birthday party. Qin Xueyao, who was playing the role of Qin Xueyao, climbed a tree to pick up a kite. She accidentally slipped and fell from the tree. The male lead appeared and saved her. When the two met, Qin Xueyao fell in love with Yin Cheng at first sight. There were two scenes today. One was between Yin Shirshir and Hua Jin, and the other was between Yin Shirshir and Lin Ji. Yin Shirshir changed into her costume and was familiarizing herself with the camera position. Positioning was very important when filming, so she had to familiarize herself with it in advance. In addition, she was worried that she would not perform well in the wire scene, and was under a lot of pressure. Suddenly, there was a fierce commotion on the set. Yin Shirshir turned around and saw countless flashing lights. It turned out that Lin Ji had changed into her costume and appeared on the set. Today there were many reporters visiting the set. However, as the media, The main visitors were naturally the female lead, Lin Ji, and the male lead, Hua Jin. The audience was looking forward to the collision and sparks between the number one young man in ancient costumes and the number one actress in ancient costumes. Therefore, as soon as Lin Ji appeared on the set, all the reporters were on the move. They aimed their cameras at her and flashed wildly. Many other actors and actresses were looking at Lin Ji enviously. As expected of Lin Ji, as the female lead, she has so many media reporters visiting her. How glorious! A female supporting character sighed with envy. Emph. Who knew if these reporters were hired by her? Lin Ji hasn't been in the limelight recently. She's not even as popular as Yin Shishir. These reporters might have been hired. Another supporting character cursed inwardly. Along the way, Lin Ji's appearance caused a stir on the set. She seemed to enjoy the sensation and smiled at the reporters from time to time. She seemed to have come prepared. She had on exquisite makeup and was posing and flirting under the flashing lights. All the reporters surrounded her excitedly and handed microphones to her from time to time to interview her. Lin Ji noticed that Yin Shishir was also looking at her. The corners of her mouth curled up and her eyes revealed a smug look, as if she was silently showing off. Yin Shishir frowned. This Lin Ji. Chapter 1606. Didn't she know that her pretentious appearance made her look like a clown? She turned around and continued reading her script. Gu Xiaoyang heard the commotion and turned around abruptly. He frowned when he saw Lin Ji surrounded by reporters. Director Gu had a strange temper. He was very particular about the rules of the set. During filming, he strictly forbade any form of visits, let alone a high-profile one like Lin Ji's. If the media were to enter the set during filming, it would be detrimental to the set. It wasn't that they weren't allowed to visit the set, but they were filming and were not allowed to do anything unrelated to the filming. Old Zhang, where did these reporters come from? Director Gu asked with a frown. The script editor shook his head. Director Gu slammed the table and said angrily, "Didn't I order time and time again to seal off the set during filming and not allow any media or fans to enter?" Director Gu, "I've already sent people to seal off the set. I don't know what's going on either." Director Gu threw down his script and walked up to Lin Ji. He waved his hand and said, "Now is not the time to visit the set. Get lost." Director Gu was known for his fiery temper. The reporters didn't dare to offend him, so they scrambled away with their equipment at his command. Lin Ji was left behind with an awkward expression. Director Gu, Gu Xiaoyang didn't wait for her to explain and scolded. "Shut up. Lin Ji, didn't I warn you not to cause any trouble on set? You're acting in my film as the female lead. Do you think you're good at acting? Or do you think you're so good that you can be so lawless and arrogant on set? How dare you let the reporters in during filming? Don't you know that I hate it when outsiders come in during filming?" Director Gu didn't give Lin Ji any face in front of everyone. Lin Ji's face turned green and red. She was extremely embarrassed. Director Gu, "You've misunderstood me. I don't know how these reporters got in." "You don't know?" Director Gu sneered. "Don't you know best how they got in? Why are you acting dumb in front of me? Do you think I'm easy to fool? Are you a best actress? Or an A-lister? Why did those reporters only take pictures of you and not the others? Do I have to be more straightforward? Why did you disregard the interests of the crew and consider the feelings of others? Have you considered my thoughts?" Gu Xiaoyang mercilessly exposed her in front of everyone, making Lin Ji even more embarrassed. The supporting actress who had guessed that Lin Ji had hired a reporter to visit her on set sneered. "I knew it. Haha." Lin Ji still wanted to explain. Gu Xiaoyang didn't want to listen to her excuses. "Look at your face. What the hell is that makeup on? Didn't I ask the makeup artist to do willowy eyebrows and cherry lips for you? Take a look at yourself and look in the mirror." Lin Ji hired a reporter to visit her at work. In order to look more photogenic, she especially asked the makeup artist to put on Korean-style makeup. Gu Xiaoyang scolded her harshly. Lin Ji felt too ashamed to show her face. Director Gu. Lin Ji's eyes were misty with tears, and she was about to cry. She deliberately acted pitiful in order to gain Director Gu's understanding. Chapter 1607. Lin Ji, I'm warning you for the last time. Don't play any more tricks. If you anger me, I don't care if you're the female lead or not. I'll cut you into a side character. I'll also give you a heads up while I'm at it. Anyway, the filming has just started, so it doesn't matter even if I kick you out of the cast. Don't blame me for falling out with you when the time comes. Anyway, the female lead in his heart was never this actress. If she were to play any tricks again, he did not mind kicking her out, and replacing Yin Shirshir with her was exactly what he wanted. Yin Shirshir was the Qin Changle in his heart. Not only did she look good, but her acting skills were also better than the actress's. Alas, the actress was one step ahead and snatched the role from him. Gu Xiaoyang was still sulking because of this matter. Lin Ji's financial backer had invested a lot in the movie, so director Gu suppressed his anger. Go wash my makeup and redo it, Gu Xiaoyang said and left. Under the mocking and curious gazes of the crowd, the actress could only grit her teeth awkwardly and return to the dressing room unhappily to do her makeup. The director walked over to Yin Shirshir, who was seriously reading the script. He nodded in satisfaction when he saw that she was focused on it. Only then did he return to discuss the wire arrangement with the martial arts director. Mushi happened to be delivering water to Yin Shirshir. When she saw this scene, she excitedly went up to her and said with a smile, Shirshir, the director has been looking at you just now. What? He stood beside you and looked at you for a long time. I think he saw that you were seriously reading the script, and was very satisfied with your attitude. That's why he smiled in relief. Yin Shirshir smiled and said, Mushi, I'm a little nervous. I heard that if I'm not careful with the wire, I'll fall down. Oh please. Do you think the martial arts director on set is just for decoration? Don't worry, it'll be very safe. Mushi comforted her. Hua Jin also finished his makeup and rushed to the set. Yin Shirshir looked up and saw him appear. She was stunned. His first reaction was that Hua Jin's title of the best young actor in ancient costumes was not undeserved. He was dressed in a crescent white robe and had an elegant demeanor. His handsome hair was draped over his shoulders, and his beautiful and exquisite facial features were embellished with makeup. His beauty was even more breathtaking. Her charm was so outstanding that it overshadowed the beauty of the female lead. Her every frown and smile was captivating. This was the first time she had acted with Hua Jin in a scene. Hence, it was also the first time she had seen Hua Jin in his ancient costume. It wasn't that she hadn't seen Hua Jin without makeup. His skin was very good, his facial features were very three-dimensional, and his eyebrows and eyes had the unique charm of an ancient handsome man. His charming eyes were like silk, the corners of his eyes were long and narrow, and when he looked back his smile was enchanting. Yin Shirshir's mind wandered for a moment before she exclaimed in shock, Gosh! Hua Jin's ancient costume shocked me. At the side, Mushi also came back to her senses. Shirshir! Gosh! Hua Jin's ancient costume is so stunning. Even if it's the real person, it's better than many of the photos of young actors in ancient costumes. It's so beautiful. She could not suppress her voice, so everyone heard her praise and could not help but look over. Even Hua Jin could vaguely hear her excited voice. He looked in Yin Shirshir and Mushi's direction with a meaningful gaze. Yin Shirshir felt embarrassed. Mushi, can you speak a little louder? Chapter 1608. Hua Jin suddenly walked toward Yin Shirshir. Yin Shirshir was stunned. She turned around and thought that Hua Jin was going behind her. But she realized that there was no one behind her. When she turned around, Hua Jin was already in front of her. He was not as tall as Muyaja, but he was still very tall at 1.8 meters. When he bent down to look at her up close, she could even see his flawless and perfect skin. It was as if it could be broken by the slightest breeze. What was even more stunning was his pair of deep eyes that seemed to be bewitching, and could make people fall for him uncontrollably. Mushi was already stunned when she saw Hua Jin walking over. Yin Shirshir came back to her senses and pursed her lips. She could not help but take a step back. Just as she took a step back, Hua Jin took a step forward. Yin Shirshir frowned and took 2 more steps back with displeasure in her eyes. Hua Jin, on the other hand, smiled and took 2 more steps forward. His strides were bigger than hers, so he could not wait to be right in front of her. Yin Shirshir could even feel his warm breath on her forehead. Her heart was beating like thunder. This man, what was he trying to do? He approached her silently, just like the first time backstage at the press conference. Yin Shirshir could not understand what he was trying to do. Hua Jin's good-looking lips curled up. He lowered his head to look at her and smiled. Are you shy? When he spoke, his voice was gentle and pleasant. His voice was not as rough as a man's, nor was it as deep and mellow as Muyaja's. Instead, it was as magnetic as a clear spring. Yin Shirshir could not help but ask, what are you trying to do? Yin Shirshir. He called her name and smiled devilishly as he tilted his head slightly. It's our first time acting together. Yes. So, Hua Jin dragged out the last word and suddenly blinked at her. Don't you think we should cultivate some chemistry? Mu Shi, who was standing at the side, finally reacted. Seeing this scene, her eyes twitched hard. No matter how one looked at this scene, why did it seem like Hua Jin was flirting with Shirshir? Could it be, was Hua Jin interested in her Shirshir? However, at this moment, Mu Shi was completely immersed in Hua Jin's beautiful side profile, and had no time to care about anything else. Yin Shirshir laughed dryly. Develop tacit understanding? I don't know what you're talking about. But can you not stick so close to me? Close. Hua Jin didn't think so. Is it close? Men and women don't know what they're doing. It's best if we keep our distance. However, Hua Jin felt that her answer was very cute. This distance isn't considered close. He lowered his head slightly and whispered into her ear. Little fool, between men and women, only negative distance is considered close. Negative distance. Yin Shirshir was confused and didn't even think of the evil side. Hua Jin felt that her reaction was very interesting. How could there be such an innocent woman in the entertainment industry? She was so silly that it was cute. Looking at his meaningful smile, Yin Shirshir realized what he meant by negative distance. She suddenly stretched out her hands and pushed him away. Jerk. Do you think it's fun to tease me like this? With that, Yin Shirshir glared at him fiercely and walked around him. Hua Jin pursed his lips and covered his mouth to hide his laughter. He was as mischievous as a lazy kitten that had secretly eaten meat. He relentlessly chased after her and followed behind her. A strand of his handsome hair hung by his ear, making his skin seem even fairer than snow. Chapter 1609. Hua Jin's voice was as gentle as a clear spring, youthful and magnetic. He was very close to her. No matter how Yin Shirshir tried to avoid him, he would still come up to her and stick to her side. Mu Shi came back to her senses abruptly and followed him. There were many supporting roles and extras on the set. Among them, many were Hua Jin's fans. Lethal Beauty was recruiting extras for the sake of Hua Jin being the male lead. Many of them did not want to be paid to join the cast, all for the sake of being able to catch a glimpse of the most handsome man in ancient costume from the nearest distance. Hence, when Yin Shirshir and Hua Jin walked one after another, many people cast strange and passionate gazes at them. Yin Shirshir was very sensitive. When she realized that there were many piercing gazes on her, she became even more annoyed with Hua Jin. She originally admired Hua Jin's costume. However, this handsome man who looked noble and otherworldly was actually like this in private. He seemed to like to be ambiguous. Yin Shirshir frowned. Her footsteps quickened as she walked to her seat and sat down. Hua Jin immediately dragged a small stool over and sat opposite her. How old are you? Yin Shirshir flipped open the script and ignored him. Her indifference did not make him retreat. Instead, Hua Jin's eyes were filled with interest. Shirshir, pay attention to me. Yin Shirshir looked up and glared at him with a distant gaze. Shirshir is not for you to call me that. Hua Jin, please keep a distance from me. Hua Jin's eyes lit up when he heard this. He smiled slightly. Shirshir, you're finally talking to me. Why do you want me to keep a distance from you, though? He lazily propped his chin with both hands, his beautiful eyes smiling. I don't want to keep a distance from the person I like. Hua Jin, you haven't started filming yet. Yin Shirshir suppressed her anger and turned around, not wanting to talk to him. Go away and don't bother me. Shirshir, you're so cold to me. Hua Jin leaned forward slightly. Looking at your ****** appearance. Are you even 20 years old? Mu Shi passed a blanket to Shirshir from the side and said with a smile. Shirshir is already 24. Seeing that she had been betrayed, Yin Shirshir turned pale with fright. She raised her head abruptly and glared at her assistant. Mushi you. Mushi knew that she had misspoken and bit her lower lip in frustration. Hua Jin's eyes widened slightly when he heard this. 24 years old. Then. She was about to reject him when he sweetly called out, Sister. This man. Yin Shirshir sucked in a deep breath of cold air. She could not hold it in any longer. Ever since she joined the production team, she had always kept her manager's words in mind to keep a distance from Hua Jin. She did not know what kind of demon was in this man's mind, but whenever he saw her, he would stare at her with an unfathomable gaze. Now he even took the initiative to tease her. She could not chase him away. Did he not know how to read people's expressions? Couldn't he tell that she was annoyed with him? The moment the other supporting actresses saw Hua Jin, they surrounded him with adoration. Hua Jin's beauty could move anyone's heart. Hence, many people on the set wanted to strike up a conversation with Hua Jin. However, Hua Jin seemed to be aloof to everyone, so they knew that they were not interested. Now they saw Hua Jin taking the initiative to chat with Yin Shirshir, but Yin Shirshir ignored him. Chapter 16:10. Therefore they mustered their courage and walked forward, surrounding Hua Jin and Yin Shirshir in the middle, trying to blend in with them. Hua Jin, you look so beautiful in ancient costume. Hua Jin, I'm your little fan. I've been following you since you debuted. The supporting actresses blushed and clenched their fists, clearly nervous. Just as they were eagerly anticipating his reply, he merely propped his chin on his hand and gazed at Yin Shirshir's face with a wide smile. It was as if he had not heard their attempts to strike up a conversation with him. Instead, he persistently asked, Sister, why are you ignoring me? Yin Shirshir couldn't take it anymore. Hey, who's your sister? You. Hua Jin's beautiful eyes lit up. You're my sister, Shirshir Jia. Stop fooling around, okay? Yin Shirshir looked like she was about to break down. I'm very busy, I have to memorize my lines. Today's filming is a scene between you and me, we can practice our lines. Yin Shirshir frowned, but heartlessly rejected. No. Why not? Yin Shirshir was about to flare up. She suddenly looked up and said in a slightly heavier tone. Hey Hua Jin, you're so annoying. I'm busy memorizing my lines, can you stop bothering me? Hua Jin was stunned. Then an extremely hurt expression appeared on her face. She looked pitiful, and her peach blossom eyes turned slightly red. The supporting actresses were originally immersed in the awkwardness of Hua Jin ignoring them, but when they saw Hua Jin being wronged and helpless, they immediately felt pity for her and accused her with righteous indignation. Hey, Yin Shirshir, don't go overboard. Why are you bullying Hua Jin like this? Exactly. Big brother Hua Jin was kind enough to help you rehearse your lines. It's fine if you don't appreciate it, but you're being so aggressive and bullying big brother Hua Jin. What's the meaning of this? Don't you know that even though she's a newcomer who just debuted, her background is much better than ours? So now she knows how to act like a big shot? Hua Jin didn't put on any airs and kindly wanted to practice with her, but she pretended to be reserved and embarrassed Hua Jin in front of everyone. That's too much. Mocking voices rose one after another. Mushi could not take it anymore. With her hands on her hips, she defended. Hey, what are you doing? What does it have to do with you? You don't have to worry about Shirshir. Have you memorized your lines? Are you familiar with the positioning? If you're so free, then wait for one more shot if you're so capable. Don't NG. Yin Shirshir pressed the back of her hand. That's enough. Mushi. Pausing for a moment, she turned around and looked at the cold faces around her. She sneered. My background is none of your concern. If you have the time, you should worry more about yourself, alright? Everyone was stunned. They gritted their teeth and were about to retort when they heard Yin Shirshir say, Can you not block me? Yuhei. Hua Jin suddenly spoke. Seeing him speak, a supporting female character immediately said agitatedly, Hua Jin, don't lower yourself to her level. She thinks she's a big shot and doesn't care about you at all. Hua Jin impatiently cut her off. What does it have to do with you? Supporting female character. Hua Jin's face suddenly darkened. I like her personality. This has nothing to do with you guys. Get lost. Chapter 16:11. She had lost all her face, so those who knew what was good for them dispersed. At last, those female supporting characters, who were jealous, did not forget to glare fiercely at Yin Shirshir. Yin Shirshir's eyes twitched hard. This Huajin, if placed in ancient times, would be a femme fatale. Huajin said, "Shirshir, don't be afraid. With me around, no one can bully you. I don't need you to speak for me." Wasn't it all because of him that she was being ganged up on? This man was really a femme fatale. Qin Zhou was indeed right. She should indeed keep a distance from him. Mushi said that he had a formidable sugar daddy behind him. Yin Shirshir was even more vigilant now. Not to mention that mysterious sugar daddy. Those fans of his in the production team were people she could not afford to offend. Hence she said, "Just don't bother me, okay? Woo. I just like you." Yin Shirshir could not take it anymore. Even if she could not afford to offend him, could she not avoid him? Hence, she stood up abruptly. Huajin followed suit and asked with a smile, "Where are you going?" "Don't follow me." "Hey." Huajin hurriedly reached out to hold her hand when he saw her walking quickly. Yin Shirshir's body trembled as if she had been scalded by fire. She flung his hand away violently. She turned around angrily and glared at him, only to see that he still had that playful and mischievous expression on his face. She looked around angrily and saw that not many people were paying attention to them. She calmed down and asked with gritted teeth, "What is your purpose?" "Motive?" Huajin tilted his head and pondered for a moment. His lips suddenly curled into a mischievous smile as he leaned closer to her. His ambiguous breath brushed against her cheek. "Is wanting to sleep with you considered my motive?" With a loud bang, Yin Shirshir's head seemed to explode. What did he mean? She looked at him in disbelief, only to see that his expression was half joking and half serious. She couldn't tell from his tone whether he was serious or joking. But this wasn't a joke, was it? Yin Shirshir widened her eyes in shock. "You." She suddenly stretched out her hand and pushed hard. Huajin was caught off guard and was pushed to the ground. The ground was made of cement. Huajin fell to the ground, and a layer of skin was slightly scratched on his palm. He frowned in pain, but his brows were knitted in an innocent arc. She was as beautiful as a painting. Even when she was frowning, she was still breathtakingly beautiful. This sudden scene attracted everyone's attention. Gu Xiaoyang turned around and saw this scene. He frowned slightly. He put aside the matter at hand and walked over. What happened? Yin Shirshir was stunned for a moment. She had lost her mind in a fit of anger, and did not expect to have such a strong hand. For a moment, she did not know how to answer. "Director Gu, what happened?" "Nothing." Huajin got up from the ground, brushed off the dust on his body and smiled lightly. "I was just fooling around with Shirshir." Gu Xiaoyang glanced at him with a sullen expression. The corners of his mouth moved slightly, as if he wanted to say something, but in the end he did not say anything. As if he had suppressed some anger, he took a deep breath and said with a frown, "Don't play around on the set. There are equipment everywhere. Be careful not to break it and delay the filming process." Yin Shirshir was a little surprised. Chapter 16:12. Gu Xiaoyang wanted to protect her, so he warned Huajin not to cause any more trouble. Huajin glanced at Yin Shirshir and then at Gu Xiaoyang before pursing his lips. "Got it. Director Gu. Go and get ready. Your scene with Yin Shirshir is about to start." Gu Xiaoyang instructed. Huajin reluctantly hummed an "oh" and nodded. However, the moment Gu Xiaoyang turned around, he suddenly leaned forward and planted a kiss on Yin Shirshir's cheek. Yin Shirshir did not react in time and widened her eyes in shock. By the time she came back to her senses, Huajin had already returned to his assistant's side to revise the script. She was angry and frustrated, thinking that Huajin was simply unreasonable. He actually stole a kiss from me. Why is this Huajin so annoying? Gu Xiaoyang happened to see this scene as well. His lips moved, but he did not say anything. He only reminded Yin Shirshir to get ready for her role, and then went back to work. It seemed that this Huajin was not simple. Even the bad-tempered director Gu did not dare to lose his temper in front of him. It seemed that he had a strong backing. Did he do whatever he wanted on set just because he had a sugar daddy's favor? Yin Shirshir trembled in anger. Beside her, Mushi looked at her with envy. She clenched her little fists and gritted her teeth in jealousy. Sure, you have good luck with men. Hua Jin took the initiative to kiss you. I'm so envious of you. Yin Sure glared at her weakly. Seeing that she was really angry, Mushi felt guilty and quickly explained. Sure, don't be angry. I was just joking. Don't take it seriously. Mushi, this joke isn't funny at all. Yin Sure lost her usual calmness. For the first time in her life, she showed anger in front of Mushi. Knowing that she was really trying her best, the assistant hurriedly apologized. I'm sorry. Sure, I didn't care about the occasion and made a joke. I'm sorry, I won't do it again. Yin Sure looked in the direction of Hua Jin with a complicated expression. Then, she took out a soft towel from her sleeve and fiercely wiped the place where Hua Jin had just kissed. The next scene officially began filming. Yin Sure tried her best to immerse herself in her character. However, when it came to her scene with Hua Jin, just standing in front of him and thinking about how he had teased her earlier, she couldn't help but feel angry. He didn't manage to pass a few of them. His eyes, emotions, and the tone of his lines were all wrong. It should have been an expression of incomparable adoration, but the camera caught a trace of annoyance in her eyes. Because of this, Gu Xiaoyang completely lost his temper and scolded Yin Sure in front of everyone. Linji finished her makeup and rushed to the set. When she saw Yin Sure in a sorry state, she was secretly delighted. Serves her right. Seeing Yin Sure being scolded so harshly, she openly mocked her. Yin Sure felt aggrieved. In the end, Gu Xiaoyang lost his patience and stopped filming for this scene. He waved his hand and said, You're not even in the right mood. Why are you wasting my time? Everyone's time is precious. You spent so much energy on the script, and in the end, you acted like this. Who are you trying to fool? With that, he waved his hand and dismissed Yin Sure. Yin Sure felt that her condition had been ruined, so she asked for leave from the director and went back. This Hua Jin is really despicable. Chapter 16:13. Damn it, if it wasn't for him, she would have been able to perform well. Yin Sure was so angry that when she returned to the hotel, she was still a little depressed. She was a perfectionist. When she was filming, she hoped to get the director's approval. She had worked so hard, but because of Hua Jin, all her preparations had gone down the drain. Yin Sure changed into her casual clothes and sat on the bed. Her anger had yet to subside. The doorbell suddenly rang. She frowned, got up and walked to the door. Through the peephole, she saw a man in a suit standing at the door. His posture was elegant and respectful. Standing behind him were two elegantly dressed women. They were holding a set of things in their hands. Through the peephole she couldn't see clearly. Yin Sure asked warily, Who is it? The man replied, Miss Yin, please open the door. I was sent by Chairman Mu to bring you to a place. Yin Sure hesitated for a moment. Seeing that this man didn't look like a dangerous person, she opened the door. Just as she opened the door, the man saw her and bowed in a gentlemanly manner. Good afternoon, Your Highness the Princess. May I know if it's convenient to go in now? Yin Sure was confused by his strange way of addressing her. However, she still nodded and said, It's convenient. The man smiled and signaled with his eyes. The two women walked into the room politely, but the man didn't come in. After closing the door, Yin Sure looked at them strangely and asked suspiciously, You were sent by Mu Yaja too? Yes, Your Royal Highness. Yin Sure was confused by their way of addressing her. She smiled awkwardly and didn't know what to say. What Royal Highness? Your Royal Highness, please change into a dress first. One of the women carried a gown and greeted her with a perfect smile. Yin Sure frowned. She didn't know what this Mu Yaja was up to. Why did he want her to change into a dress for no reason? Was he bringing her to a banquet? If that was the case, why didn't he inform her in advance? As a result, she was caught off guard. She glanced at the gown. When the gown was unfolded, Yin Sure was shocked. What a beautiful dress. The champagne-colored gown had a skirt that reached the ground. The design of the flat-shouldered gown seemed to have been tailor-made for her, revealing her jade-like collarbone and graceful neck. The chest area was adorned with a few pink roses that extended from the waistline all the way to the hem of the skirt. The flower adornment was beautiful and flawless. The petals were especially lifelike, almost to the point of passing them off as genuine. If one did not examine them carefully, one would not be able to tell that the petals on the dress were fake. Your Highness, please change into your formal attire. Yin Shirshir hesitated for a moment, then nodded. After changing into the gown in the bedroom, she walked in front of the full-length mirror. She was like a flower fairy standing in the mirror, refined and beautiful. The two women went up to her and helped her to the dressing mirror. One was in charge of her hair, and the other was in charge of her makeup. An hour later, she was dressed up like a princess from a fairy tale, noble and elegant. Yin Shirshir looked at herself in the mirror. The person in the mirror really looked like a princess from a fairy tale movie. But this dreamy crystal makeup was not suitable for a banquet. Chapter 16:14. Through the window, the scenery of the street flashed by quickly. She didn't know where the car was taking her. She was in a daze the entire way. When she got out of the carriage, the sky was getting dark and the night was beautiful. When she lifted the hem of her dress and got out of the car, the scene in front of her shocked her greatly. The carriage stopped at the entrance of Fairy Tale Valley. Fairy Tale Valley, a theme park that looked like a fairy tale wonderland. Yin Shirshir had brought you here before, so she had a deep impression of Fairy Tale Valley. Fairy Tale Valley was closed for a period of time because of the shooting incident. After some repairs, it was put back into operation. However, at this moment, the Fairy Tale Valley in front of her eyes was completely different from the one she remembered. The night was getting late, and the moonlight was like silver in the starry sky. Under the illumination of the starry sky, the iconic castle of Fairy Tale Valley stood in the distance between the canyons. It was resplendent and majestic, just like a medieval European royal castle. It was retro and luxurious, and it was magnificent as the lights constantly changed colors. The huge Fairy Tale Valley was surrounded by a classical and romantic atmosphere. There was a crystal carriage parked at the entrance. The attendant stood beside the white horse respectfully and gently welcomed her. Your Highness, beautiful princess, please get on the carriage. Yin Shirshir was slightly stunned when she saw the hand reaching out to her. Her brain stopped working for a few seconds before she slowly reached out and allowed the attendant to welcome her into the crystal carriage. This is what's going on. Yin Shirshir sat in the carriage, her thoughts still in a mess. Everything happened too suddenly. She was still in a daze and didn't know what was going on. The crystal carriage passed through the garden path that was covered with pink rose petals. Yin Shirshir was stunned, but she was stunned by the dreamy scene in front of her. She couldn't help but lean against the window and enjoy the fragrant breeze. So beautiful. So dreamy. It was really like a dream. The breeze blew, and the petals on the ground were swept up, invading her face. Yin Shirshir brushed her face with her fingertips and gently rubbed the petals on her face. She sniffed lightly, and the fragrance assailed her nose. On the road, there were many tourists coming and going. When the crowd saw the crystal carriage approaching, they all widened their eyes in amazement. They looked at Yin Shirshir, who was sitting on the crystal carriage, with jealousy. Some of the young girls couldn't help but chase after the carriage as they were pleasantly surprised. Wow! It's a crystal carriage. I've only seen this kind of carriage in fairy tale movies. It was a real crystal carriage, so beautiful. I want to sit down too. The woman in the carriage is so beautiful, like a princess. She looks like a flower fairy. There are so many flower petals on her body. How mesmerizing. This woman looks a little familiar. I feel like I've seen her somewhere before. When Yin Shirshir heard this, she was so shocked that she retracted her head back into the carriage. The crystal carriage slowly passed through the romantic garden arch, and a huge Ferris wheel came into view. Under the background of the bright starry sky, the huge Ferris wheel slowly rotated along with the music. The attendants helped Yin Shirshir down from the crystal carriage. In an instant, it was as if several beams of light from the sky were projected onto her body. The beautiful lights surrounded her, so much so that when she stood in the middle of the bright light, it made her surroundings seem dark.